In my past life, I absolutely loathed Chloe. I wouldn't even let the daughter we shared call me Dad. Yet, she and our little girl were unfailingly devoted to me, right up until I got our daughter killed and drove Chloe to bankruptcy. It was only when I was betrayed and left for dead by a manipulative woman and my so-called best friend that I finally understood how wrong I had been. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my daughter was kidnapped. Without a moment's hesitation, I kicked open the factory door. Inside, Lily's small, trembling hands were clenched into tight fists. She was trying her hardest not to cry, silently repeating "Mommy, save me" 100 times in her head. The next second, the door to the abandoned factory was violently kicked open. The few people inside jumped at the sound, their heads snapping toward the entrance. A man stood silhouetted against the light. That man. Lily looked up and saw me. "Daddy." Her little eyes blinked rapidly, and she even rubbed them with her small hands to make sure she wasn't seeing things. After kicking in the door, I immediately scanned the room for that small figure. I only breathed a sigh of relief when my eyes landed on the little girl. Before I could take a step forward, however, a guy with green hair jumped out. "Who the hell are you, buddy? You got a death wish? Didn't you know this place was occupied? You got some nerve barging in here." Seeing the group of men approach me, Lily quickly got up and tried to shield me with her small body. "Bad guys, stay away from Mr. Ethan." When I heard what she called me, my heart clenched painfully. I was the one who had warned her that if she ever called me Dad again, I would leave the Sterling estate for good. But now, hearing her call me that, it just felt wrong. In the end, I suppressed my emotions and looked gently at the little girl who was about to rush over. "Lily, close your eyes. Wait for me to come to you." At my words, Lily's steps halted abruptly. It was the first time she had ever heard me speak to her so gently. Though worried, the little girl obediently closed her eyes and stood in the corner. I smiled with relief at my well-behaved daughter, then my expression hardened as I turned to the men surrounding me. "Who hit Lily?" My voice made a few of them jump, but the green-haired guy eventually worked up his courage. "What's there to be afraid of? That old iron door was probably just rusted out. Besides, it's just one guy." The others realized I was alone and immediately puffed out their chests, striding toward me. With her eyes closed, the little girl suddenly heard a series of agonized screams. She grew so nervous that her little hands started to tremble. Is he even human?" the green-haired man stammered, clutching his broken left arm and stumbling back a dozen steps, his eyes filled with terror. Then, his gaze fell on the girl in the corner, and an idea struck him. He snatched an iron pipe from the ground and swung it viciously at Lily's head. My expression changed drastically when I saw what was happening. I knocked down the man in front of me with a single punch and, in the instant the pipe came down, I threw myself in front of Lily. A dull, heavy pain exploded from my back. My vision went black and I dropped to one knee. Seeing me injured, the green-haired thug raised the pipe again, intending to knock me out. I shook off the dizziness, spun around, and caught the descending pipe. With a twist, I wrenched it from his grasp, then executed a fluid turn and kicked him to the ground, knocking out a few of his front teeth in the process. The remaining men, seeing things had gone south, dragged their battered bodies away and scrambled out of the factory. I clutched my shoulder, staggered a few steps, and crouched down, taking a moment to recover. After steadying my breath, I knelt in front of the anxious little girl. As the surroundings fell silent, Lily grew a little uneasy. Suddenly, she felt a warm touch on her face. "Lily, does it hurt?" My fingers gently traced her red, swollen cheek. Lily opened her eyes to see my own were bloodshot, looking at her with heartache. I'm not hurt." Lily quickly shook her head, fighting back tears because I used to hate it when she cried. Looking at this cautious little girl, I wished I could go back and slap my former self. "Lily, let's go home." I wanted to take her hand, but when I saw her instinctively shrink away from me with a fearful look, I had no choice but to withdraw my hand. The little girl first stood up and dusted herself off, then glanced at me walking ahead and obediently followed behind. But after just a few steps, she started to feel dizzy. Meanwhile, on the highway, 3 black sedans were speeding along. Miss Hayes was driving, her face a mask of despair. Half an hour ago, Chloe had received a call at the office from the Sterling estate, saying I had taken Lily out. She had rushed out of her office, only to receive a call from the kidnappers shortly after. They had used their tech resources to trace Lily's location to the factory, but my phone was unreachable. A quick check revealed the last call I received was from Aiden. "Call him," Chloe commanded, her face furious, sending a shiver down Ms. Hayes' spine. When the call connected, a man's voice came through. "Ms. Hayes, you were looking for me?" Ms. Hayes fought back a wave of nausea and began to question him. Aiden, have you seen Ethan? Aiden knew Chloe was surely listening, so he feigned difficulty. Ms. Hayes, I haven't seen Ethan. Did he happen to mention where he was when he called you this morning? He didn't tell me. He had asked me to watch Lily for him, said he had to meet someone, but I had a family matter to attend to, so I couldn't. Seeing that she wouldn't get any useful information from him, Ms. Hayes quickly ended the call. Chloe leaned back, pressing a hand to her forehead. After a long moment, she wearily uttered 2 words. To the factory. Back at the factory, just as we stepped out of the building, the little girl's strength gave out and she collapsed to the ground. I rushed over and scooped her up. Lily, what's wrong? I didn't eat breakfast, so I'm a little dizzy, the girl murmured, nestled in my arms. Her face was flushed, and she couldn't help but clutch the corner of my shirt. I never let her get close to me, but now, she had a reason. I breathed a sigh of relief and gently patted her head. Go to sleep. There'll be food when we get back. Lily nodded and drifted off peacefully in my arms. As I held the girl, a sharp pain shot through my back, making me wince. But when I remembered what Lily had endured for me in our past life, the pain seemed to vanish. I had only taken a few steps when the roar of engines filled the air. 3 black cars screeched to a halt in front of me. I froze, staring blankly at the woman who emerged from the lead car. I wanted to say her name, but no sound would come out. Chloe's brow furrowed slightly when she saw the girl sleeping soundly in my arms, as if surprised that I would be holding Lily at all. But when her gaze fell on Lily's swollen face, her eyes hardened. She rushed forward and took the girl from me. Her intimidating glare and defensive posture left me at a loss. I could only watch as she placed Lily in the car and drove away, leaving me standing there in a daze. A moment later, Ms. Hayes was pushed out of the car. Chloe had left her behind to take me back to the Sterling estate. I looked up at the car disappearing down the road, and my vision blurred. The strength that had been holding me up was gone, carried away with my daughter. My legs gave out and I collapsed. Beside me, Ms. Hayes saw my pale face and her mind went blank. Sir, what's wrong? Someone nearby saw the situation and quickly prompted her. Ms. Hayes, call Ms. Blackwood. Chloe looked at the girl lying in the back seat, her heart a mix of complex emotions. Lily is your child too, how could you let this happen? Just then, she saw an incoming call from Ms. Hayes and assumed I was throwing a tantrum about going back. She almost declined it but ultimately pressed the answer button. Spit it out, don't waste my time. The woman's furious voice crackled through the phone, stunning Ms. Hayes into a 3-second silence. Finally, she stammered, Miss Blackwood, Ethan, he's collapsed. The words had barely left her mouth when the screech of tires tore through the air. Chloe's face was grim as she immediately spun the car around and raced back. Before the car had even come to a complete stop, she was out and rushing to my side, helping me up. Ms. Hayes quickly explained, Ms. Blackwood, he just suddenly passed out. It might be low blood sugar. Chloe looked at my ashen face, and her heart seized. As she was about to lift me, her hand on my back felt something sticky. She pulled it away and saw it was covered in red. At the sight of the blood, Chloe's vision swam, and her hand began to tremble uncontrollably. Ms. Hayes, take Lily back to the estate. Before anyone could react, Chloe had already lifted me into the passenger seat of another car and was speeding toward the hospital. Ethan, wake up. Please wake up, Chloe pleaded, one hand on the steering wheel, the other supporting my head as it rested on her shoulder. I was in a detached state, unable to distinguish reality from illusion. All I knew was a brilliant white light before me, and a voice from within it, endlessly calling my name. I don't know how much time passed. How is he? Chloe asked, looking at Dr. Evans as she came out. Dr. Evans removed her mask, her expression grave. He's out of immediate danger. What on earth happened to him? To be injured this badly? Chloe's fists, hidden in her sleeves, were clenched tight, her face dark. You should go see him. He should be waking up soon. A few minutes later, Chloe sat by my bedside, gazing at my pale face. She reached out to touch me, but her hand froze in mid-air. Remembering how I had forbidden her from touching me, she slowly pulled her hand back. Just then, my fingers twitched, and I slowly opened my eyes. I tried to turn over, but a sharp pain shot through my shoulder. Ethan, the doctor just finished treating you. Please don't move, Chloe said, seeing I was awake. She was already kneeling by the bed, holding my arm to keep me still. I looked at the woman before me, remembering how she had resolutely held me and died with me in our past life, and my eyes began to redden. Seeing my expression, however, Chloe lowered her head, released my arm, and stood up to leave. But just as she stood, I grabbed her wrist. The warmth of my touch rooted her to the spot. She looked down at my hand on her wrist, her heart leaping with a joy she couldn't contain. Forcing down her excitement, she sat back down on the chair. Seeing me staring at her intently, she patted my hand reassuringly. "Ethan, who hurt you?" Her words made my nose sting, and tears instantly welled up in my eyes. Chloe had never seen me cry before, and the sight sent her into a panic. She hastily grabbed tissues from the nightstand and fumbled to wipe away my tears. "Ethan, it's all my fault. You can hit me, you can yell at me, just please don't cry, okay?" Her voice was incredibly gentle. I sniffled and wiped my tears. "I want to turn over." Seeing me lying on my stomach, she understood immediately. "Ethan, let go. I'll get a nurse. Are you afraid you can't move me?" Chloe looked at me in disbelief, seeking confirmation. "Are you saying you want me to help you?" I nodded firmly. "It's a small thing, no need to bother the nurses. They're very busy." Chloe looked at me, standing there for a long moment as if wrestling with the thought, before finally coming over to carefully help me up. Her stunning face was so close, and her faint, pleasant scent made me avert my eyes. I didn't know where to put my hands, so I just ended up clutching the hem of her clothes. Chloe's movements paused for a second. She looked down at me, so quiet and still, and seemed momentarily lost in thought. The moment Dr. Evans walked in, she saw our intimate posture and blurted out, "In broad daylight? Isn't this a bit much?" Startled by the interruption, Chloe hastily let go and pulled away. But then she realized who it was and shot Dr. Evans a fierce glare. Dr. Evans quickly explained, I was just coming to check on his condition." Hearing this, Chloe reined in her temper, stepped aside, and took a few paces back. At the same time, I looked at the woman in the white coat and greeted her politely. "Dr. Evans, it's been a while." Dr. Evans was taken aback by my greeting. She felt something about me was different. She wanted to ask if I'd hit my head, but seeing Chloe standing nearby, she changed her question. "Mr. Sterling, are you feeling any discomfort? Dizziness, perhaps?" "No, I just feel weak." "That's normal, you'll be fine after a few days of rest. You should stay in the hospital for a month." "What, a month?" I immediately turned to Chloe, putting on a pitiful expression. Chloe hadn't seen the full extent of my back injury and thought it was just a cut. "Why is it so serious?" "Serious injuries like this can take months to heal. I've already cut that recovery time in half for him," she said with a helpless shrug, using the opportunity to slip out of the room. Seeing my chance, I made a final plea. "I can recover at home. After all, Lily is still there. Lily has Mrs. Davison to look after her. You just rest here." The woman refused without hesitation. If this had been before, I would have already started making a scene. But seeing me sitting there so quietly, she found it a bit unsettling. I leaned back against the pillow and thought for a long time before finally speaking. I'm hungry. What do you want to eat?" "I'll go get it for you," Chloe responded immediately. But she knew I was trying to send her away. All this beating around the bush, even showing a softer side, was it all just to escape? The thought brought a bitter smile to her lips, and she stumbled, almost losing her balance. "I want dumplings, from that little shop in the Grand Central Tower." I had always loved them in my past life, but I'd never told her, always sneaking off to eat them by myself. Chloe was silent for a long moment. Before she left, she turned her head slightly and left me with 2 words, "Wait for me." As she walked out, I watched the closed door and let out a slow sigh. "Don't worry. In this life, no matter how long it takes, I will wait for you." After that, I lay in bed, recalling the events of my past life, and my heart was instantly consumed by hatred. "Aiden, Scarlett, I will make you wish you were dead." Meanwhile, at the mall, Scarlett's face was etched with impatience. "Aiden, what time is it? Why isn't Ethan here yet?" "What? Ethan hasn't shown up? That can't be right. When I called him, he should have already been on his way. I've been waiting here for hours, and there's been no sign of him." "Scarlett, don't worry. Ethan must have been held up by something. I'll go to the Sterling estate to find him right now. Forget about him, let's just go on a date." Hearing this, Aiden fought the urge to slap her. "Calm down," he told himself. "I still need this woman to keep Ethan hooked so I can get my chance with Chloe." With that thought, the man took a deep breath. "Scarlett, wait for me. I'll be right there." After hanging up, Aiden tried calling me repeatedly, but my phone remained unreachable, making him stomp his foot in frustration. At the same time, Chloe was sitting in a gazebo outside the hospital, holding a bag of dumplings and eating her own portion. "Why don't you take those upstairs to eat?" Dr. Evans asked, sitting across from her. Chloe looked toward the fountain in the hospital courtyard, her eyes dull. "He's probably long gone by now." If that's the case, it doesn't matter where I eat. Dr. Evans followed her gaze and pondered for a moment. It's been 5 years. How long are you going to let him get away with this? All the injuries you've sustained over the years, some from him, some you took for him from the Blackwood family elders. Sometimes I'm truly amazed you can endure it all. Chloe didn't speak, just lifted her gaze to the distant sky. Dr. Evans knew her words were useless. She understood that the woman before her was hopelessly in love with me. In the end, all she could do was let out a deep sigh. Chloe finished her dumplings, wiped her mouth, and headed back to the hospital room. As she turned the doorknob, a flicker of hope sparked within her, wondering if I might still be there. But a second later, she mocked herself. Why would he wait for you? He's probably already run off to find Scarlett. With a soft creak, the door swung open. The moment she looked up, she saw me sitting on the windowsill, watching her. It's been 2 hours. I'm starving. As I spoke, my eyes lit up at the sight of the dumplings in her hand. You didn't leave? Chloe rubbed her eyes hard, wondering if she was hallucinating. Seeing her reaction felt like a knife twisting in my heart. In my past life, I had run away at every opportunity. No wonder she couldn't believe I was still here. I quickly composed myself and smiled. You told me to wait for you, didn't you? Chloe was silent. For a fleeting moment, she wanted to hug me tightly, but she quickly suppressed the urge. She was afraid that if she did, I would only despise her more. Taking the dumplings, I looked at the woman standing by the window, a little puzzled. Aren't you having any? This place has the best dumplings. I'm not hungry. You eat, Chloe said, remembering how she'd secretly eaten downstairs. The regret was so sharp it almost took her breath away. Seeing that she wasn't coming over, I felt a pang of disappointment. She was probably still angry that I had put Lily in danger. It was true. If I hadn't entrusted Lily to Aiden, none of this would have happened. Lost in thought, I held a dumpling in my hand, unable to finish it. Noticing this, Chloe frowned slightly. What's wrong? No appetite. I shook my head without a word. The truth was, I was past the point of hunger, and I was struggling with what to call her. I used to call her that witch, hey, or that woman, but I couldn't do that anymore. Technically, I should call her honey or darling, but changing so suddenly would make her suspicious, especially since we had just fought 2 days ago. To ease into it, I decided to avoid any name for now. Kingi go homi. Hearing this, the woman scoffed. What are you planning now? I didn't know why she was angry, so I just lowered my head and said softly, I want to go home. The home you're talking about, is it the Sterling estate? Chloe's tone was laced with sarcasm. I nodded firmly. Seeing my unwavering gaze, Chloe's expression shifted. She met my eyes for a moment before walking towards the door. I'll go talk to the doctor then. It was only when I heard the door close that I realized what she meant. A smile spread across my face, quickly followed by a wave of guilt. My past self, what an incredible woman I had let slip through my fingers. What? Discharge him? Are you sure? Dr. Evans stared in disbelief from her office chair at the woman sitting across from her, pen and paper in hand. He'll be recovering at home. What are the precautions? Don't tell me you don't know. Of course I know. Keep the wound dry, avoid strenuous physical activity, no heavy lifting, apply medication on schedule, maintain a light diet, and come back for a follow-up in a week. Chloe wrote down every single point, more diligently than she would for her own work. Don't tell me you can't remember these few things. Do you really need to write them down? Chloe ignored her, carefully folded the note, put it in her pocket, and walked straight out of the office, leaving a bewildered Dr. Evans behind. Ms. Hayes looked utterly drained as she stepped out of the hospital elevator. Half an hour ago, she'd received orders from Chloe that I was being admitted, so she had rushed to the Sterling estate to pack a bag. She had just gotten back to the office and hadn't even warmed her seat when another call came, telling her to take the luggage right back. Sir, everything is packed, Ms. Hayes said, bowing numbly. I looked at Ms. Hayes's expressionless face and gave an awkward smile. Thank you for your hard work, Ms. Hayes. Please wait for us downstairs. We'll be right down. Though I was weak, my ridiculously good looks were still undeniable, and it seemed to dazzle Ms. Hayes for a moment. Snapping out of it, she quickly grabbed the luggage and left the room. The moment Chloe entered the room, she saw me lying face down on the bed. Her expression changed instantly. Ethan, are you not feeling well? Don't worry, I'm fine. I just feel weak all over, like I can't walk, I said, keeping my head down with a look of self-reproach. Chloe noticed my subtle behavior but couldn't figure out what I was up to. She could only test the waters. Should I call for a stretcher for you? My face fell at her words. Being carried out on a stretcher is too embarrassing. How about, you help me? Chloe froze on the spot, unsure how to respond. Seeing her silence, my chest ached a little. After a moment, I sat up, ready to leave the room on my own. But as soon as I got out of bed, I saw her outstretched hand. She said, "Here, come on. We won't use a stretcher, but if you fall, it's not my fault." My face lit up with joy. I immediately grabbed her hand, wanting to press my entire body against hers. Chloe appeared calm on the surface, but inside, her heart was racing. I could even feel her breath tickling my neck. When Ms. Hayes saw the two of us emerging from the hospital, pressed so closely together, she froze in place. "What are you just standing there for?" It wasn't until Chloe's voice reached her that she snapped out of it and hurried to open the car door. Because my back was injured, I sat sideways in the seat to avoid putting pressure on the wound, facing Chloe. Chloe was working on her laptop. In the past, my gaze would always be fixed on her screen, but this time, she could feel an intense stare directed at her, the kind of look she had always dreamed of. She desperately wanted to turn and confirm it, but she was afraid it was just her imagination. I watched her, my eyelids growing heavier and heavier. The week before my rebirth had been a living hell of torture, and the kidnapping happened right after, giving me no chance to breathe. Now, finally in a safe space, I peacefully fell asleep. Only when she heard the sound of my steady breathing did she dare to turn and look at me. After watching for a moment, she took out a blanket and gently draped it over me. Then, she looked away, her gaze shifting to Ms. Hayes. Ms. Hayes understood and spoke softly. "Ms. Blackwood, we caught the guy with the green hair at the factory. He's being interrogated now. Leave him breathing. I'll deal with him personally." Hearing Chloe's tone, Ms. Hayes couldn't help but think that she was only gentle in front of Ethan. To the outside world, she was an absolute terror. At the entrance of the Sterling estate, Chloe saw my exhausted state. Carefully avoiding my injured back, she gently scooped me into her arms and carried me out of the car. An hour earlier, Lily had woken up and learned that her dad was in the hospital. She had been sitting numbly on the steps, staring expectantly at the door. The moment she saw me, she jumped up and ran over. "Lily!" But before I could speak, Chloe gestured for her to be quiet. The little girl covered her mouth, watching her sleeping father in her mother's arms, and quietly walked alongside them. I had moved into the Sterling estate 5 years ago. Back then, my adoptive parents and grandparents had all died in a car accident, their car plunging into the river. With no one to lead it, Sterling Industries was acquired by Blackwood Enterprises. Chloe, finding me homeless, brought me to the estate. Because of her volatile personality, coupled with the manipulations of Aiden and Scarlett, my past self mistakenly believed she had orchestrated the accident to swallow up my family's company and solidify her own position. When I opened my eyes again, it was already 3 in the afternoon. I sat up, looked around the empty room, and reached for my phone before remembering it was broken. Just then, I felt someone watching me. I glanced towards the door and saw a cute little head peeking around the frame, a small hand gripping the wall. When she saw me looking, the little girl quickly pulled her head back, about to run. I quickly called out to her. The girl's head peeked out again, her eyes full of hope, but her body was timid and withdrawn. It was clear she was afraid of me. "Lily, why don't you come in?" "Mommy said not to come in, that I would disturb your rest," the girl replied in a small voice. I lowered my voice as well, trying to sound as gentle as possible. "And where is your mommy?" "Mommy went out. She'll be back later." "I see. Lily, come here, okay?" I beckoned with my hand, then patted the space on the bed next to me. Lily looked around, and seeing no one was watching, she scurried into the room. "Mr. Ethan, where are you hurt? Did those bad men hurt you?" Lily didn't dare get too close, afraid I would push her away like before. Her words reminded me of her last sentence in my previous life, "Daddy, don't cry," and a sharp pain pierced my heart. I got out of bed and knelt in front of her. "Lily, would you still be willing to call me Daddy?" Lily froze for a second, then nodded vigorously. Daddy was a word she said to my photograph every single day. My nose stung, and I swallowed hard before pulling the little girl into a tight hug. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I will protect you from now on." Lily felt me trembling and gently patted my back with her small hand. "Daddy, don't be scared. Mommy and I are here." Hearing her say that, the tears I was holding back finally fell. After a long while, I sat her on my lap. "Lily, after how I treated you before, you don't hate me?" As I spoke, I couldn't help but look away, unable to meet her eyes. The little girl shook her head, a smile on her chubby face. "Mommy told me that Daddy loves me, he just doesn't know how to show it." "Mommy said that?" I looked at her, completely incredulous. Yes. Mommy also said that every time Daddy yelled at me, he would regret it so much he'd cry. She said Daddy doesn't like being too close, that it makes him uncomfortable. As she spoke, Lily's voice grew quieter, and she instinctively created some distance between us. Seeing this, I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. A moment later, Lily suddenly grabbed my hand. "Daddy, what's wrong with your hand?" She saw the red drops falling to the floor and, not knowing what to do, turned to run and get the housekeeper. But I ignored it and pulled her into my arms again. "Lily, Daddy's fine. Can you just let me hold you for a little while?" "Lily, I want to hold you." Hearing me say this, Lily beamed with a joy she couldn't hide. She had always wanted to hug her daddy. Every day after preschool, seeing other kids being held by their parents, she was filled with envy. After a long time, I wiped the tears from my eyes and released her. "Lily, Daddy is going to find Mommy. Want to come with?" "Daddy, wait for me. I'm going to change my clothes." Lily skipped happily out of the bedroom. Just then, a maid came to report, "Sir, Mr. Aiden is waiting for you at the main gate." The warmth I was feeling vanished in an instant. I walked to the window and saw Aiden pacing back and forth at the gate. I casually told the maid to let him wait. After the maid left, I turned to look at myself in the mirror. Because Aiden had once told me that Scarlett liked guys with heavy, emo-style eyeliner, my eyes were ringed with smudged black makeup. The sight of it made me want to laugh at myself. I then went to the third-floor walk-in closet to pick out some clothes. After changing, I thoroughly washed my face, removing every trace of the ridiculous makeup. Half an hour later, satisfied with my appearance, I left the closet. By now, Aiden had grown impatient, his temper flaring. "What the hell are you people doing? Does it take this long just to announce someone?" "Mr. Aiden, you don't have an appointment. Mr. Sterling is currently busy. Please wait a moment." Aiden grew even more irritated at the unyielding maid. Every time he'd visited before, I would be waiting for him at the gate. He never needed an appointment. "Is this your first day? You dare to stop me? Are you trying to get fired?" The maid flinched and took a step back. It was, in fact, her first day on the job. Just then, another servant saw the scene at the gate, rushed over, pushed the new maid aside, and looked at Aiden with a fawning expression. "Get out of the way. How dare you stop Mr. Aiden?" "Mr. Aiden, I'm so sorry. She's new here. Please, come in, come in." Meanwhile, "Daddy, is that you?" Lily stared at me, my appearance now even more striking, and she could hardly recognize me. I chuckled and knelt in front of her. "What? It's only been a few minutes and you don't recognize me anymore." With that, I took Lily downstairs. We had just reached the main hall when Aiden's voice called out, "Ethan, are you okay? I heard you were in the hospital." Aiden wore a look of concern, but when he saw I was unharmed, a flicker of disappointment crossed his eyes. I narrowed my eyes and turned to the servant who had let him in. "How did he get in, sir?" The new maid didn't know the situation and stopped Mr. Aiden. "I was the one who brought him in," the servant said with her head bowed, sensing an opportunity to make an impression. "This one's smart, much sharper than the new girl," Aiden said, understanding the servant's intention and immediately speaking up for her. I kept my gaze fixed on the servant for another moment, then glanced at the time. "I'm going to see my wife. If you have business with me, make an appointment next time." Aiden's smile froze on his face. He looked at me in disbelief. "An appointment? I need an appointment to see you. Is there a problem?" I asked, sitting down on the sofa and taking a sip of tea from the cup on the table. Aiden forced a smile and said it was no problem, but inwardly he was cursing me out. I paid him no more mind and simply took Lily's hand. As we were about to leave, Aiden quickly called out, "Ethan, I have something to ask you," but I didn't even spare him a glance. As I passed the servant who had let him in, I informed her that she could go to HR to collect her final paycheck and leave. The servant froze, her face a mask of utter disbelief. Mrs. Davison, the head housekeeper, had witnessed my new attitude toward Aiden. She now addressed him with a look of disdain. "This way, Mr. Aiden. Surely you don't need us to show you out." Aiden's face turned red with anger, but in the end, he left the Sterling estate in disgrace. I drove with Lily toward Blackwood Enterprises. The thought of Aiden's face made me sneer. In my past life, I had given him everything, even taking him to high society events where he met Scarlett. After Sterling Industries was taken over and all my other friends abandoned me, only Aiden stayed by my side, even helping me pursue Scarlett. It wasn't until the moment I died that I learned they had been together all along. It was my fault. My indulgence had allowed someone from a modest background to develop such twisted ambitions. "Daddy," Lily said, tugging on my sleeve as she saw my furrowed brow, "are you angry with that uncle?" I stroked her head. "Lily, no one is more important than you and Mommy. You don't have to pay any attention to him from now on." Blackwood Enterprises, the conference room. Chloe sat at the head of the table, her hands clasped. while the executives seated below her were visibly on edge. The calculations from Data Division 3 are wrong. I think it's time for a change in your IT department, Chloe said, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. The presenter froze, then forced himself to finish the rest of his report before returning to his seat with his head hung low. Next, the manager of the technology department swallowed hard, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and stepped forward to present. Just then, her phone vibrated. Chloe's eyes flicked to the screen, and the rhythmic tapping of her fingers stopped. She saw the call was from the Sterling Estates landline, and a sense of unease washed over her. When she answered, Mrs. Davison sounded hesitant. Chloe had previously ordered that I was not to leave, but the young miss was a different story. Ms. Blackwood, Ethan has left the estate with the young miss. Downstairs, Ms. Hayes was sipping coffee in the lobby lounge when she looked up and saw Chloe striding out, her face dark. She heard the words, "Get the car," and immediately put down her cup and hurried after her. She didn't even have to think. Seeing Chloe in such a rush, she knew I must have run off again. On the street outside Blackwood Enterprises, I sat in the car, marveling at the skyscraper piercing the clouds. When a light rain began to fall, I parked in an outdoor lot and got an umbrella from the trunk. The two of us, father and daughter, walked along the curb, talking and laughing. The little girl happily stomped in puddles. But when she looked up and realized we were in front of her mother's company building, she instinctively turned and gripped my hand tightly. "Daddy, are you leaving?" Seeing Lily's instinctive reaction, my heart ached. I bent down and gently wiped a few raindrops from her face. "Lily, I will never leave you with a stranger again." Meanwhile, Ms. Hayes, trailing behind Chloe, looked up and saw a man in a black shirt wiping Lily's face. From their angle, she couldn't see the man's face clearly. Why did Ethan leave the young miss with someone else again? And right in front of the company building. Ms. Hayes wore an expression of utter defeat. She glanced at Chloe out of the corner of her eye and quickly took a step back. Chloe merely glanced at the man's clothes before charging forward. Lily saw her mother approaching and waved eagerly. Seeing her reaction, I knew who it was. But just as I was about to turn, a sudden push sent me stumbling off the curb and into a puddle, the umbrella clattering to the ground. Lily didn't react at first. A few seconds later, she pushed her mother away and shouted angrily, "Mommy, why did you push Daddy?" Hearing Lily's words, Chloe's eyes widened. She spun around and saw me sitting miserably on the ground. She froze for a second, swallowed hard, then rushed to help me up. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. Are you hurt?" Chloe's face was filled with anxiety as she brushed the dirty water from my front. She then quickly moved behind me and only relaxed when she saw that my back hadn't gotten wet. Seeing Chloe's guilty expression, Ms. Hayes immediately tried to ease the tension. "Sir, what are you two doing here?" But my attention was entirely on the mud splatters on my clothes. Chloe looked at me with my head down, completely at a loss. "Ethan, I didn't do it on purpose. I saw the clothes. I didn't realize it was you." Chloe quickly helped me up, her gaze shifting away. Just one glance at me had sent her heart rate soaring. She was afraid that if she looked any longer, she might actually faint from the palpitations. I let out a deep sigh. "I was trying a new style to surprise you, but I guess it failed." Seeing my dejected expression, Chloe stammered, "This outfit, it looks good on you. That's more like it. So, is it better than before?" I said, deliberately leaning closer, so close I could see the fine hairs on her face. Chloe forgot to breathe for a moment. A few seconds later, she pulled away, turned, and told Ms. Hayes to get a change of clothes. Watching her flee in disarray, I couldn't help but smile. "Daddy," Lily asked, looking up at me, "what are you smiling about?" "Just thinking how cute your mommy is." "Let's go," I said, patting her head. At the company entrance, Chloe suddenly stopped, took off her jacket, and draped it over my shoulders. I glanced down at my clothes. It really wouldn't be right to go inside looking this dirty. She was always so thoughtful. However, Chloe's intentions were completely different from what I thought. She just wanted to hide me away, to keep anyone from looking at me, especially other men. Unfortunately, with my face, I still attracted the attention of quite a few women the moment I entered the lobby. These stares made Chloe extremely unhappy, and her tone turned cold. "Why did you come here?" I thought she was angry, so I quickly pulled Lily forward. "Lily said she wanted to see your company." Chloe looked at the girl. Taking my cue, Lily nodded eagerly. "I wanted to see it, so I asked Daddy to bring me." Hearing the word, "Daddy," Chloe instinctively glanced at me. Seeing that I wasn't angry, she finally relaxed. In Chloe's office, there was always a fresh change of clothes ready for me. So, once we were upstairs, She took the clothes from Ms. Hayes and told me to go change in the private lounge. The lounge was decorated in Chloe's signature style. I glanced around before taking off my shirt. Looking at the large patch of gauze on my back, I shook my head. The bandaging was a bit excessive. As I was getting dressed, the sound of high heels approached from outside. The lock clicked, and Chloe walked straight in, stopping behind me. She looked like she wanted to reach out but hesitated. "Ethan, don't forget to have Mrs. Davison apply your medication tonight." "What? You can't help me with it?" Chloe didn't answer. She was silent for a moment, then changed the subject. "When Lily called you Daddy, was that your idea?" I nodded immediately, confirming that it was. Chloe stared at my reflection in the mirror for a long time before gently brushing the back of her hand against my cheek. "Lily is still young. She can't handle you being hot and cold, close one moment and distant the next. Ethan, if you have any dissatisfaction, just take it out on me." Her words made me freeze. I watched her leave the room, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. She must think I'm just putting on an act. I shook my head, feeling like I had truly brought this upon myself. I took a deep breath, returned to the main office, and, as if nothing had happened, sat down on the sofa with Lily. At that moment, Ms. Hayes looked at the two of us on the sofa and timidly asked, "Ms. Blackwood, should we continue the meeting?" Chloe nodded, put down the file in her hand, and left the office. Seeing her leave, my heart sank with a little disappointment. But the little girl, as if reading my mind, immediately scooted closer. "Daddy, even if Mommy's not here, you still have Lily to keep you company." My disappointment vanished, and I happily pinched her little nose. 10 minutes later, however, I was bored out of my mind. I turned to Lily. "Hey Lily, want to see what your mommy looks like when she's working?" The girl put down her book and nodded. "As long as I'm with Daddy, I'll do anything." Her words were like a royal decree. I immediately picked Lily up and headed to the conference room. When Ms. Hayes, who was standing outside, heard what I wanted, she quickly went inside to ask for permission. When Chloe heard, her eyes narrowed, and her gaze shifted to me outside the door. "He really doesn't miss any opportunity to get company secrets." "Let them sit in the back," Chloe said, leaning back in her chair, a trace of weariness on her face. "Ethan, if this is what you want, I'll give you everything. Absolutely everything." "Sir, you can sit in the chairs along the wall," Miss Hayes said, pointing to the corner as she approached. The two of us snuck in quietly so as not to disturb the meeting. At some point, the atmosphere in the conference room became much more relaxed. Chloe barely spoke, just nodding or humming in agreement. The executives exchanged glances until someone noticed that her gaze was constantly fixed on the corner of the room. I listened to the tedious reports, feeling even more bored than before. Lily, on the other hand, was listening with rapt attention. All I could do was stare blankly at my wife. This was only the first day of my new life. Thinking about what might happen tonight made my breathing quicken. We were still sleeping in separate rooms. If I wanted her to trust me, I had to be the one to take the initiative. I remembered my past life. She had kept me confined to the Sterling estate. One time, I snuck out to find Scarlett, and that night, she was so furious that she forced herself on me. Not long after, she found out she was pregnant. To give birth to the child without scandal, Chloe even threatened Scarlett's life, which pushed our relationship to a breaking point. Just a few days before my rebirth, Chloe had gotten drunk and kept throwing herself at me, and I had pushed her down the stairs. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, and the more disgusted I felt with my past self. Unable to contain it, I slammed my fist on the table. "Daddy!" Lily jumped, startled, and cried out instinctively, thinking I was angry. The conference room fell silent in an instant. All eyes turned to me. I snapped out of my memories and realized what I'd done. My face flushed red, and I wished I could hide my head under the table. Thankfully, Chloe calmly told everyone to continue the meeting, and the attention shifted away from me. I patted Lily's head. "Lily, I'm just going to the restroom." Then I quickly slipped out of the conference room. Ms. Hayes saw me rush out with a beet red face and immediately came over. "Sir, is the meeting over?" "No. Where's the restroom?" "Around the corner to the left," Ms. Hayes pointed. Once inside the restroom, I braced my hands on the sink, took a deep breath, and splashed cold water on my face. "Ethan, oh Ethan, can you please stop embarrassing her?" I deeply regretted my outburst. I walked listlessly out of the restroom and saw the mother and daughter standing by the conference room door from a distance. When Lily saw me approaching, she hid behind her mother, her eyes misty with tears. "Daddy, did I make you angry?" I stopped in my tracks and looked at the upset little girl. "Lily, why would you say that?" "Because your face looked so scary just now," Lily said, tugging on her mother's clothes. My gaze shifted to Chloe, who was expressionless. I knew they had both misunderstood, so I quickly explained, "It was my fault. I embarrassed you both." I knelt down, looking at Lily with a guilty expression. The girl blinked, let go of her mother's hand, walked over to me, and poked my cheek with her little finger. "No, you didn't. Daddy's face looks cute when it's red." Seeing this, Chloe frowned and pulled her back. "Lily, I'm having Ms. Hayes take you home now." "But Mommy, I want to go home with you and Daddy." Lily had never dared to disobey her mother before, but things were different now that her daddy was here. The pleading look in the girl's eyes melted my heart. I looked up, about to speak for her, but when I met Chloe's gaze, the words died in my throat. "Lily, it's getting dark. You should go home and have dinner. Mommy and Daddy will be back soon." I watched Lily being led away, my face clearly saying, "I'm scared of her too. Aren't we going home?" 20 minutes later, the car pulled up in front of a 5-star hotel. Chloe ignored my gaping mouth and pulled me straight out of the car. Is she taking me here to get a room?" I watched her walk to the front desk to get a key, my heart pounding erratically. Top floor of the hotel. The room's massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the New York City skyline. The woman looked at me standing nervously at the door and said coolly, "You're sleeping here tonight. What do you mean? You're not staying?" She was silent for a moment after hearing my question. "I'm right next door. It's late. Get some sleep." By the time I ran out after her, she had already used her key card to enter the adjacent room and closed the door. I was a bit stunned. Thinking back to her words, "It's late," I had a feeling she was hiding something from me. At 9 p.m., I heard a faint sound of a door opening across the hall and immediately looked up. Once the hallway was quiet, I quickly opened my door and followed. I took a separate elevator down to the ground floor and watched her drive away. I then hailed a taxi and told the driver to follow her car. In that moment, I could taste adventure. After all, I was a legendary figure in the mercenary world, codenamed Apex. It was only because Chloe had kept me confined in my past life, and because I was afraid Scarlett would be repulsed by me being a killer, that I had requested to retire. Watching the direction she was driving, I felt a little confused. Wasn't this the way back to the Sterling estate? After she entered the estate, I noticed a car parked at the main gate. Upon closer inspection, I recognized it as my in-laws' car. I instantly understood. They must have come because of Lily's kidnapping earlier today. I paid the taxi driver, hopped over the western wall of the estate, and hid beneath the living room window. Inside the living room, Chloe's father slammed his hand on the table. "You're still protecting him. If Ethan hadn't taken Lily out, this kidnapping never would have happened. We are taking Lily with us today. That man doesn't even treat her like a daughter. I told you he's already changing. Just give him some time. Don't give me that nonsense. Where is he? Where the hell did he go? He's not here. Today was an accident, and Ethan was injured too." Chloe's father snorted heavily. "In your eyes, a scratch on Ethan is a major injury. Fine, the family has its rules. This incident requires a consequence. Are you going to take the punishment for him again? This has nothing to do with him. I will go to the family hall the day after tomorrow to accept whatever punishment is due." But hearing this, Chloe's mother became furious, her body trembling with anger. "Chloe, are you trying to kill yourself? How many punishments have you taken for him this month alone? You get Ethan out here. How can a grown man have the nerve to hide behind you?" Chloe was silent for a moment before finally saying, "Mom, I'll come pick Lily up in 3 days." Seeing that Chloe was immovable, her parents exchanged a look, said no more, and left the estate with a sigh. A light rain began to fall from the sky. I sat beneath the window, letting the rain soak my clothes. It was already 10 p.m. when Chloe returned to the hotel. She changed her clothes and then walked to my door. I had just gotten back myself and had splashed water on my face, trying to hide my red-rimmed eyes. Hearing a knock as I came out of the bathroom, I rubbed my eyes and opened the door with a cheerful smile. "What's up? You're not asleep yet." Chloe had come to bring me medicine. She placed the bottle in my hand and turned to leave. Quickly grabbed her. "You expect me to apply this myself? I can't reach." Chloe's steps faltered. She looked at my pitiful expression and sighed softly. "Go lie down on the bed." With that, she entered the room and went into the bathroom to wash her hands. I watched her enter, then locked the door from the inside, removed the key, lifted my shirt, and obediently lay face down on the bed. As Chloe drew near, I could feel the warmth of her breath. Then came her hands, washed with warm water, gently unwrapping the gauze on my back. When she saw the vast expanse of bruising and the wound, her voice trembled. She asked if it hurt. What a joke. How could a grown man like me be afraid of pain? But no matter what I said, Chloe's touch remained incredibly gentle. If I hadn't been watching, I wouldn't have even felt her applying the medicine. After a little while, Chloe suddenly spoke. My mother wants to have Lily stay with them for a few days. What do you think? They've already taken her, and she's asking me now. I just grunted in agreement. Lily hasn't seen them in a while. It's good for her to visit. Chloe murmured her assent and then fell silent. After finishing with the medicine, she covered me with the blanket, packed up the medical supplies, and stood to leave. But as soon as she was on her feet, I grabbed her wrist. I guess you'll just have to make do and rest here tonight. I'm going to sleep, I said without waiting for her reply, scooting over to the other side of the bed and closing my eyes. The woman stared at me for a long time. Finally, after glancing at the clock and considering her options, she lay down on the sofa to rest. I waited for 10 minutes, but when I didn't feel anyone next to me, I opened my eyes and turned to see her sleeping on the sofa. I couldn't help but mutter, "Such a humble woman." After a moment's thought, I grabbed the blanket and 2 pillows and tossed them onto the sofa. The noise startled Chloe awake. She sat up quickly, only to see me kneeling on the sofa, arranging the pillows. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "Getting ready for bed, of course," I said, placing the 2 pillows just right before pulling her into my arms. Feeling my body heat, Chloe's mind went fuzzy for a moment. But when she came to her senses, she started to struggle. Seeing this, I held her tighter. "Don't go, Chloe." Her name on my lips made her pause. She looked up at me, seeming to notice the slight tremor in my body. After a moment's hesitation, she pulled the blanket up and buried her head in my chest. Chloe couldn't describe how she felt. It was like a dream. Today, I had shown her a level of dependence she had never seen before. This kind of intimacy was something she had never even dared to imagine, not even in her wildest dreams. Chloe raised her hand, wanting to touch my face, but she was afraid of shattering the dream. So, she pulled her hand back and nuzzled her head deeper into my chest. A short while later, her phone vibrated. Chloe quickly silenced the alarm and turned to look at me, still fast asleep, breathing a sigh of relief. The next moment, her eyes fell on the key lying on the bed. While I slept, she leaned in and gave me a soft peck on the forehead. "Ethan, I'll be right back." 10 minutes later, in a secure underground facility, Ms. Hayes followed behind Chloe, explaining in a low voice, "Ms. Blackwood, the green-haired guy has confessed everything about what happened at the factory. Ethan was injured protecting the young miss." At her last words, Chloe stopped dead in her tracks. When Ms. Hayes saw the look on her face, she was so frightened she stumbled back several steps. Entering the cell, Chloe looked at the green-haired man tied to a post and gave a slight wave of her hand. "Yes, Ms. Blackwood. According to his confession, he was originally going to attack the young miss, but Ethan blocked him. I understand. Get out." After the others had left, Chloe walked over to a table and began selecting a weapon. "I can't even bear to touch him. I'm afraid I might hurt him. And you dared to lay such a heavy hand on him? Who gave you the right?" As she finished speaking, Ms. Hayes, waiting outside, heard a blood-curdling scream from within. Half an hour later, Ms. Hayes could still hear the man screaming inside and couldn't help but shiver. The rain had stopped by the time Chloe returned to the hotel. She went to her own room first to shower before coming back to mine. But when she entered, she found me curled up in a corner. Chloe's heart sank. "Ethan, what's wrong?" She rushed to my side and helped me up. I looked up at the woman before me. "Chloe, where did you go?" The week I was tortured by Scarlett and Aiden, I was locked in a pitch-black room with no light. So when I woke up just now to the darkness and the silence, with no one around, it triggered a traumatic response. Chloe looked at my vacant eyes, her heart twisting in pain. She could only pull me into a tight embrace. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I shouldn't have left. The floor is cold. Let's get up, okay?" But after waiting for a long time, I still didn't respond. She gritted her teeth and simply lifted me into her arms. I only came back to my senses when she placed me on the bed and brought over the blanket and pillows. I watched as she propped a pillow under my head and covered me with the blanket. Then, she just stood by the bed, unmoving. After a long moment, I reached out and grabbed her hand. "Honey, are you planning to stand there until morning?" At my word, Chloe's grip tightened on my hand, her face a mask of disbelief. What did you call me? What's wrong? Does Ms. Blackwood think it's inappropriate for me to call you that?" "No, it's just, go to sleep," Chloe stammered, then climbed into the bed beside me. I had wanted to say more, but seeing her close her eyes, refusing any further conversation, I obediently kept quiet. About 10 minutes later, once she was sure I was asleep, Chloe dared to open her eyes. The thought that I was only calling her honey to get those 6 key project proposals from Blackwood Enterprises for Scarlett made her burn with a jealousy so intense that cold sweat beaded on her forehead. She had to get up, take a small white bottle from her pocket, and swallow the last 2 pills inside. No, Ethan, you are mine. You can only be mine. The next morning, Chloe left the hotel early. I had just gotten dressed and opened the door to find Miss Hayes and several bodyguards waiting outside. Sir, we've been ordered to escort you back. I sighed and followed them. Everyone at the Sterling estate knew I had some fighting skills, and on top of that, they knew I was the person Chloe cared about most. So neither Miss Hayes nor the bodyguards would ever dare to use real force on me. Their attempts to stop me were always symbolic, and in the end, it was always Chloe who had to bring me back herself. Back at the estate, I looked around my familiar bedroom and slumped onto the desk in frustration, wondering how I could get her to lift her restrictions on me. Just then, Mrs. Davison handed me a new phone that Chloe had prepared for me. I thanked her, inserted the SIM card, and turned it on. The screen immediately filled with countless text notifications, 80% of which were from Scarlett and Aiden. I didn't even bother reading them, I just deleted them all. I wanted to block them both, but thinking of my plans, I suppressed my anger. After 2 hours of cleaning up the phone, I finally erased every trace of them, so I wouldn't have to see their names and lose my appetite. I stood on the balcony of my room, looking down at the field of pink lavender below. In my past life, Chloe suffered from insomnia but refused to take medication, so she had planted this field to help her sleep. The very next day, I had set it all on fire. The memory made me curse myself again. I went straight downstairs. When the gardener saw me coming with a pair of shears, he looked terrified and quickly moved aside. A few maids wanted to tell me that Chloe had spent a great deal of time planting these flowers, but they thought better of it and kept quiet. In their minds, if I knew Chloe had planted them, I would surely rip them all out. I ignored them and walked into the lavender field with my tools and a basket. Her sleep was poor, and this field was so far from her bedroom. It would be more effective to cut a few stems and place them in her room. An hour later, I carried a basket full of lavender to her bedroom. Our rooms were both on the second floor, hers at the far west end. When I pushed open the door, I was shocked. The room was completely bare except for a bed and a sofa. After a moment of silence, I shook my head, placed the flowers on the floor, and ran downstairs to ask the head butler, Mr. Coleman, to purchase the things I needed. Mr. Ethan, if we proceed with this, I'm afraid Ms. Blackwood today might. Mr. Coleman hesitated, looking troubled. Don't worry, I'm not about to make Chloe homeless. Meanwhile, at Blackwood Enterprises, Ms. Blackwood, Ethan says he wants to renovate the room, and he's even tearing down a wall, Mr. Coleman reported, his face grim as he watched workers moving in and out. Chloe, flipping through a document, replied coolly, as long as he doesn't leave the Sterling estate, let him do as he pleases. Mr. Coleman looked at the disconnected call and shook his head. It seemed that as long as I didn't run away, I could tear down the entire estate and Chloe wouldn't care. In the evening, I wiped the sweat from my brow and looked at the newly transformed room with a satisfied nod. Then I went to the kitchen. Mrs. Davison, when is she coming back? Mr. Ethan, Ms. Blackwood called a while ago. She said she has work at the office and won't be back tonight. My spirits sank instantly. I didn't even have much of an appetite for dinner. At 8 p.m., a loud clap of thunder echoed through the sky, and a flash of lightning illuminated the room. I rushed to the window and saw the storm brewing in the distance. I quickly got dressed, then jumped directly from the second-floor balcony, rolling a few times to land smoothly. I hid in the shadows to avoid the patrolling guards, then scaled the wall and left the estate. I remembered one night in my past life. Lily was terrified of the thunder, and her mother was working late at the office. She had gathered all her courage to knock on my door, only for me to chase her away. Lily, just like her mother, never showed weakness. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. I circled around to the estate's underground garage, got in a car, and sped toward the old family mansion, Blackwood Enterprises. In her office, Chloe looked at the weather outside. The memory of me curled up alone in the corner last night made her worry. Is he resting? Ms. Hayes replied immediately, Ms. Blackwood, the butler sent a message 3 hours ago. Ethan has already gone to his room to sleep. The woman stared out the window, thought for a moment, and finally gave the order, prepare to return to the estate. At the same time, at the old mansion, Lily was hiding under her covers, pressing her hands tightly over her ears, her body trembling. Just then, she heard a tapping sound at the window. The girl curled into a ball, too scared to move. Not until she heard a familiar voice. Lily, are you asleep? Hearing the voice, she shot up from the bed, not even bothering with her slippers, and rushed to open the window. Daddy, what are you doing here? I scanned the area, and seeing no one, I climbed in through the window and immediately swept my daughter into my arms. Lily, did you miss me? Lily was a little shy but nodded vigorously. I released her and pinched her little cheek. How about Daddy reads you a story to help you sleep? Daddy, can you sleep with me tonight? Lily, not tonight. Hearing my refusal, Lily glanced at the lightning flashing outside. But Daddy, it's going to rain. I picked her up and set her down on the bed. Daddy has something to do tonight. In 2 days, Mommy and I will come pick you up and take you home, okay? Hearing this, Lily obediently lay down to sleep. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, the little girl quickly fell asleep under my soothing voice. I put down the storybook and tucked her in tightly. The clock on the wall showed 9 p.m. After a moment's thought, I grabbed an umbrella, left the old mansion, and drove to the family hall. The so-called family hall was a place specifically for punishing members of the clan who had broken the rules. Every member of the Blackwood family had to abide by its judgments. Not even Chloe, the head of the family, was exempt. I stood at the entrance of the hall, holding an umbrella. The attendant on duty heard footsteps approaching and quickly got up to investigate. Who's there? Who dares to trespass in the family hall? I'm here to accept punishment. The attendant looked at me, then his eyes widened, and he blinked hard. You look familiar, but you don't seem to be a Blackwood. Chloe Blackwood's husband, Ethan Sterling. Hearing this, the attendant's face changed dramatically. He quickly stepped back to make way. Right, I remember now. Mr. Sterling, please, come in. There were 2 other people in the disciplinary hall. The attendant hurried in and introduced me. This is Mr. Sterling. I ignored the stunned men and looked around. The room was sparse, containing only a gleaming golden statue with a kneeling cushion in front of it. I walked straight to the cushion, knelt, and gestured for them to begin. The 3 men exchanged uneasy glances. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Blackwood is coming tomorrow. Perhaps you should wait for her. What? Are you afraid? Mr. Sterling, only members of the Blackwood family come here. I am Chloe Blackwood's husband. How am I not part of the family? The truth was, these attendants all knew I was the apple of Chloe's eye. Every time I messed up, it was Chloe who came to take the punishment. In the end, the men played rock, paper, scissors, and the loser stepped forward. Mr. Sterling, I will now read the charge. On February 24, 2026, at noon, Ethan Sterling willfully left the young miss in the care of a stranger, leading to her kidnapping. As no serious harm was done, the punishment is 5 lashes. And what if she had been crippled? In that case, it would have been at least 20 lashes. I lowered my head. No wonder. After that incident in my past life, she was hospitalized for a month, and I never once asked about her, never even went to see her. Mr. Sterling, we will begin now, the attendant said, and then, following procedure, he swung the whip. After a series of dull thuds, my fists were clenched, and beads of sweat formed on my forehead. This specially made whip could make a grown man scream in agony with just a single lash. I instinctively looked up at the statue before me. My body was in agony, but the thought of how much that woman had silently endured for me hurt my heart even more. Soon, the punishment was over. Mr. Sterling, should we call a doctor for you? The 3 men asked cautiously, looking at my pale face. I staggered to my feet. Erase the record of my punishment. You know what to say, right? We understand, Mr. Sterling. We won't say a word to Ms. Blackwood. The family hall had a rule. Once a punishment was served, the record could be cleared. I nodded, clutching my shoulder. My back burned with a searing pain. The previous wound had likely been aggravated. I picked up my umbrella and stumbled back to the car. Meanwhile, the Sterling estate was ablaze with lights. The entire staff stood trembling in the main hall, not daring to look up at the woman before them. Chloe stared intently at the security monitor. When she saw me jump from the window, she sagged weakly, then gritted her teeth and straightened up again. Seeing this, Ms. Hayes, standing behind her, felt a sense of dread. Chloe had run out of her medication, and she hadn't had a chance to get a refill from Dr. Evans yet. Track his location. I want to know where Ethan is. Not daring to delay, Ms. Hayes immediately took out her laptop and activated the hidden tracker in my phone. The downpour continued for a while before softening to a drizzle. At that moment, outside the Chroma bar, a white Phantom was parked on the side of the road. I was leaning against the car, vomiting repeatedly. Just then, Aiden's surprised voice came from across the street. Ethan, what are you doing here? I froze for a second and looked up. Aiden and Scarlett were walking toward me, one after the other. At the sight of them, my fists clenched so tightly they creaked. I quickly lowered my head to hide the look in my eyes. Ethan, don't get the wrong idea. Scarlett and I just happened to run into each other at the bar, Aiden quickly explained as they got closer. Scarlett cleared her throat and instinctively started to scold me. Ethan, what are you doing at a bar? Do you have any idea what I'd think, seeing you here? Her words instantly brought back memories of my past life, and I had to force myself to hold back. I had just opened my mouth to say something when the roar of car engines surrounded us. My heart sank at the sight. A dozen bodyguards emerged from several cars, and Chloe walked up to me, her face like a thundercloud. I instinctively took a step back. Seeing the situation, Aiden rushed to stand in front of her. Ms. Blackwood, please don't misunderstand. I was the one who asked Ethan to come out. It has nothing to do with Scarlett. But Chloe didn't even look at Aiden. She took the umbrella from Ms. Hayes, had the bodyguards pull Aiden away, and then held the umbrella over my head. Didn't I tell you not to get the wound wet? Why did you come out without an umbrella? I did bring one, I quickly explained. Lily is afraid of thunderstorms, so I went to the old mansion to see her. I only came back after she fell asleep. I just happened to run into them here. But Chloe remained expressionless and simply said, let's go back. I was about to say more when Scarlett's voice came from behind me. Ms. Blackwood, Ethan has already explained himself. There's no point in dragging this out, is there? Ms. Hayes stood to the side, gritting her teeth. She thought to herself that if I hadn't unconditionally protected Scarlett, even threatening to die for her, a mere general manager of Willow Creek Incorporated would never have dared to speak to Chloe like that and live to see another day. Ms. Hayes, someone is bullying your boss. Aren't you going to do anything? I said, taking Chloe's hand and looking at the silent assistant beside us. Ms. Hayes was stunned for a moment, not quite processing my words. Chloe's gaze, however, fell on my hand holding hers, and the color in her face improved slightly. Let's go home. We can leave this to Ms. Hayes, I said, thinking that if I weren't so weak from the punishment I just received, I would have kicked Scarlett to the ground myself. Ethan, Ms. Hayes won't go easy on her just because of you. What are you talking about? Why would she go easy on her? Before I could finish, Chloe cut me off, turned, and pulled me into the car. The Sterling estate. Chloe pulled me by the hand up the stairs. Mr. Coleman watched the furious Chloe and the silent me, sighed, and dismissed the rest of the staff for the night. I tried to explain myself countless times on the way, but it was as if she couldn't hear me. The moment we reached the estate, she dragged me out of the car and all the way to the study. She then locked the door, walked up to me, and slammed me against the wall. Honey, I already explained. I really did go to the old mansion. You can ask Lily if you don't believe me. Ethan, I'm tired of that excuse. Give me a different reason, and maybe I can fool myself into believing you. I'm really not lying. Ethan, why are you always trying to leave me? I can give you anything, so why do you keep pushing me to this point? I can't feel sorry for you anymore. With that, she shoved me to the floor and pinned me to the carpet. I winced in pain, wondering how this woman could be so strong. Even injured, I was still apex. I shouldn't be this powerless against her. Honey, it really hurts. But before I could finish, she silenced me with her lips. An hour later, I lay numbly on the floor. Chloe slowly got dressed, bit her lip as she looked at my expression, then covered me with my clothes and left without a backward glance. After a long while, I sat up, the clothes sliding off me. My body was covered in marks she had left. I was both angry and amused. She said she wouldn't feel sorry for me, but her actions felt more like a reward. The delayed pain hit me, and I winced, my eyes rolling back. The constant friction against the wool rug had caused the whip marks on my back to start bleeding. Not only was my back a mess, but my little brother down there was also taking a beating. It was a strange mix of pain and pleasure, and I just sat there in a daze for a while. I dragged my aching body to a cabinet in the study, found a change of clothes, and put them on. But just as I was about to leave, my strength gave out, and I collapsed onto the carpet. Meanwhile, Chloe stumbled back to the guest room and stood under a cold shower. She slid down the wall and sat on the floor, cold water dripping from the ends of her hair. The next day, Chloe went to my bedroom door and knocked for a long time, but there was no answer. A wave of immense regret washed over her. She leaned against the door for a long time before finally turning and leaving the estate, heading for the family hall. Miss Blackwood, you're here, the attendant at the family hall said, rushing to greet her. The woman ignored the greeting and walked straight into the inner hall. The attendant quickly called after her, Miss, there are no punishments scheduled for today. Chloe's steps halted instantly. What do you mean? Hasn't Ethan's punishment been carried out yet? The men exchanged glances but said nothing. Chloe's brow furrowed. She turned, left the hall, and headed for the old family mansion. Meanwhile, The butler stood in the main hall of the mansion, informing Chloe's father, "Sir, Miss Blackwood has arrived. Has she received her punishment?" "Sir, the matter was cleared last night." Her father nodded. When he saw his daughter walk in with a frown, he couldn't resist taunting her. "What's wrong? You didn't even blink when you took a dozen lashes for him before. Now it's just 5 and you look like this? I'm telling you, you brought this on yourself." Chloe paid him no mind and simply asked, "Did you issue the order to the family hall or not?" Her father was a bit confused by the question. He stared at her. "Didn't you take care of it last night?" At this, the butler immediately stepped forward. "Miss, last night at 10:19 p.m., the family hall's record was cleared." Hearing that specific time, something seemed to click in Chloe's mind. Just then, a sleepy Lily emerged from her bedroom and ran straight to her mother. "Mommy, why are you here so early to pick me up? Daddy said you weren't coming until tomorrow." Chloe felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Chloe knelt in front of the girl, her face anxious. "When did Daddy tell you that?" Lily put her hands behind her back and swayed. "Daddy told me to keep it a secret." Chloe's voice turned cold. "Lily, Mommy, don't be mad. I'll tell you, okay? But you can't tell Daddy." Chloe immediately promised. Seeing that her mother had sworn, the girl smiled and said, "Daddy told me last night when he was putting me to sleep." Seeing that Chloe was waiting for more, Lily thought for a moment and added, "Daddy knew I was scared of the thunderstorm, so he came specially to be with me last night. He only left after I fell asleep." "What time did he get here?" Seeing the strange look on her mother's face, Lily's voice grew softer. "Daddy came at 9 o'clock and left about half an hour later." After that, Chloe's father came out from washing his hands just in time to see his daughter rushing away. Lily stood there, clenching her fists, a worried look on her face. At that moment, Chloe's eyes were bloodshot. First to the old mansion, then to the family hall, and then passing the chroma bar on the way back to the estate. The route and the timeline matched perfectly. Remembering my pale face from the night before, Chloe's expression grew even darker, and her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they creaked. Back at the Sterling estate, Mrs. Davison looked at the undamaged main hall and sighed in relief. "I had already called the furniture company to arrange for replacements, but it turns out," Mr. Coleman looked around, his face a picture of disbelief. "Yesterday, Ms. Blackwood and Mr. Sterling were in the study. Maybe that's the room that needs new furniture." "That's possible. By the way, is Mr. Sterling not in the main house? I suppose after his fight with Ms. Blackwood, he probably went to the West Wing." "All right then, while Mr. Sterling is away, I'll go clean their rooms." After Mrs. Davison finished cleaning my room, she took her cleaning supplies and headed to Chloe's. Chloe's room was so bare that it usually took less than 10 minutes to clean. But after all the construction I did yesterday, she had no idea what state the room would be in. With that thought, Mrs. Davison pushed open the door. The scene inside made her freeze on the spot. The walls, once plain white, were now split between a striking Klein blue and white. A king-sized bed sat in the center of the room, flanked by nightstands holding vases of pink lavender. The room was fully furnished with a desk, bookshelves, and a computer, and even the toiletries in the bathroom were now in matching pairs. As she took it all in, a warm, motherly smile spread across Mrs. Davison's face. She thought, "Ms. Blackwood will be so happy when she sees this." A few seconds later, she heard a noise from downstairs. Realizing Chloe was back, she hurried down. "Miss, you have to come see your room. Mr. Ethan did it all himself." Chloe was taken aback. Remembering what Mr. Coleman had said about renovations yesterday, she first glanced at my closed bedroom door before heading toward her own room. When she saw the room's new decor, her thoughts became a jumble. She stumbled, her mouth falling open. Ethan did all of this?" "Yes, Mr. Ethan worked on it all afternoon yesterday. He knew you have trouble sleeping, so he even picked the lavender himself to put in the room. And look, miss, on the bookshelf over there, he's put a lot of children's bedtime stories. They must be for the young miss." Mrs. Davison continued to marvel, completely missing the way Chloe's face was gradually losing its color. Chloe's fists clenched under her sleeves, and she turned and left the bedroom. Immediately after, there was a knock on my bedroom door, but there was still no response from inside. Seeing this, Mrs. Davison, who had followed her out, quickly explained, "Miss, Mr. Ethan isn't in his room. I just finished cleaning it." Chloe's eyelid began to twitch. The thought that I might have left the estate sent a sharp pain through her heart. Fortunately, noticing Chloe's pale face, Mrs. Davison added, Mr. Ethan might be in the West Wing. The patrol guards didn't see him leave." Chloe thought that made sense. She immediately sent people to search the West Wing while she went to check my phone's location and review the security footage. so she went to the study. But the moment she entered the code, pushed open the door, and saw what was inside, the color drained from her face. The world spun and she collapsed to the floor. The next second, she scrambled to her feet and rushed over to lift my unconscious body from the floor. The crimson stain on the carpet was shocking. My face was flushed, my body was burning up, and the blood from my back had already dried. Chloe leaned me against her shoulder and lifted the back of my shirt. The sight of the angry red welts blurred her vision with tears. She screamed for help, then fumbled to get me onto her back and carry me toward the hospital. In the examination room at the hospital, several doctors were treating my wounds. "Dr. Evans, should we call the police? These injuries are horrifying." Dr. Evans looked at my barely breathing form and the state of my injuries, her brow deeply furrowed. "I'll handle this. Get him to the operating room. Prep for surgery." With that, Dr. Evans removed her gloves and left the exam room. She saw Chloe huddled on the floor in the hallway, and the words of reprimand she wanted to say died on her lips. Though she didn't like me this time, she felt Chloe had gone too far. The woman had her head buried in her knees. Sensing someone's approach, she waited a moment before asking, "Ethan, how is he?" The previous wound reopened, and these new injuries weren't treated in time. There's extensive inflammation and infection on his back, causing a persistent high fever. "The situation is not good," Dr. Evans said, glossing over the worst of it, but they both understood the gravity. After a long pause, Chloe summoned all her strength to utter a few words. "I'm leaving him in your hands." Dr. Evans was taken aback. It was the first time she had ever heard Chloe speak with such vulnerability. "I'll do everything I can." Meanwhile, at the mercenary organization's headquarters, Maya was leisurely sipping her tea. The next moment, someone burst in. "Boss, I just heard from a friend at the hospital. Chloe Blackwood's husband was injured and is in surgery." The teacup in Maya's hand shattered. She shot to her feet. "What did you say? Which hospital?" "Mount Sinai Hospital." At the same time, outside the operating room at the hospital, Chloe's heart dropped as she watched Dr. Evans emerge with a grim expression. "The infection has led to systemic sepsis. He's comatose now. We're going to perform a blood transfusion. There are risks involved. You need to sign this." Hearing this, Chloe stared at the critical condition notice in the doctor's hand, and her vision went dark. Chloe, we can't delay any longer," Dr. Evans urged, looking at the silent, head-bowed woman. Chloe stiffly raised her hand and mechanically signed her name. As she watched Dr. Evans hurry back into the operating room, all the strength drained from her body, and she collapsed to the floor. The minutes ticked by. The woman remained huddled in the corner, unmoving. The light above the operating room door stayed red. After what felt like an eternity, the red light finally went out. The woman slowly lifted her head, her eyes vacant as she looked at the person coming out. Dr. Evans wiped the sweat from her forehead, sighed deeply at the sight of Chloe, and walked over. "He's going to be okay. He'll be moved to the ICU shortly." Hearing those words, Chloe's tense body finally relaxed. She kept repeating what Dr. Evans had said, "He's going to be okay." Seeing her state, Dr. Evans rushed to the pharmacy, then ran back to give Chloe a sedative injection and have her swallow a pill. A moment later, looking at the now unconscious Chloe, Dr. Evans sank wearily into a chair. In the evening, Maya sat by the bedside, her expression grave. The door opened, and a woman carrying a briefcase entered. "Ms. Maya, here is the injury assessment report." Maya took the report, her eyes growing redder the more she read. She then shifted her gaze to me. "Ethan, what were you doing? Playing some kind of SM game?" She stopped mid-sentence, realizing how inappropriate that sounded. After a moment of silence, she asked herself inwardly, "Is this the life you wanted, Ethan?" In another room, Chloe's eyes snapped open, and she sat up abruptly. "Chloe, you just took your medication. Rest for a bit." "Ethan is fine. Don't worry," Dr. Evans said, gently pushing her back down. But Chloe just pushed her hand away and clutched her head. The next moment, she looked at Dr. Evans. "Where's Ethan? Who's looking after him?" Dr. Evans's face stiffened, and she was speechless for a long moment. Seeing her expression, Chloe immediately ripped the four from the back of her hand, pushed Dr. Evans aside, and ran out of the room. A few breaths later, the door to my hospital room was thrown open. Chloe burst in and saw a woman sitting by my bed, using a towel to wipe the sweat from my forehead. "Who are you? Get your hands off him. Who gave you permission to touch him?" Chloe's eyes blazed with fury. If the woman's hand hadn't been on my forehead, Chloe would have already charged at her. Seeing the out-of-control Chloe, Maya's hand paused. She looked up, tossed the towel into the basin, and said, "Ms. Blackwood, You hurt him like this because you think he has no powerful family to back him up? Do you see him as your plaything or your boy toy? Maya leaned back in her chair, sizing up the woman before her. Are you trying to meddle in my family's affairs? Maya didn't respond, simply raising her hand slightly. The man in the suit behind her stepped forward and handed a file to both Chloe and Dr. Evans, who had just arrived. After reading the documents, both of their faces turned ashen. The man in the suit then spoke at the opportune moment. Ms. Blackwood, the harm you've inflicted on Mr. Sterling constitutes a criminal offense. Ms. Maya, as Mr. Sterling's sister, will be filing for divorce on his behalf. Additionally, Dr. Evans, for this hospital's failure to report Mr. Sterling's injuries, we will be pursuing legal action. Sister? You're his sister, Chloe murmured, her face a mask of confusion. Maya didn't answer, just continued to stare intently at Chloe. Chloe quickly recovered. I will not divorce him. I'm afraid that's not up to you, Ms. Blackwood. With the evidence we have, your consent is not required. As the two women faced off, I, lying on my side, opened my eyes. The first thing I saw was Maya's profile and a stranger. Maya, what are you doing here? Hearing my voice, Chloe instinctively started to move toward me, but seeing Maya there, she stopped. You're awake? Are you hungry? Is there anything you want to eat? Maya knelt by the bed and gently brushed the hair from my forehead. I shifted slightly, and a wave of intense pain washed over me, making me wince. Seeing this, Maya's heart clenched. She quickly got some water and held a straw to my lips. Don't move. Ethan, what have you been doing? Getting yourself into this state. Why am I in the hospital? Where's Chloe? Maya glanced at Chloe standing by the door and sneered. Chloe, you just took a trip to death's door, and there wasn't a single person here to see you. If I hadn't been here watching over you, you could have disappeared and no one would have known. Dr. Evans remained silent. Chloe wanted to speak, but she didn't know what to say. I started to piece things together. I had passed out after changing my clothes. Now I was in Dr. Evans's hospital, which meant Chloe must know what happened. With that thought, I struggled to sit up. What are you doing? What are you doing? Maya cried, rushing to support me. Go get Dr. Evans for me. I have something to ask her. I tried to get up, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I could only lie on my side, facing the window. Hearing her name, Dr. Evans looked awkward. She's not going to ask for an official injury report, is she? Chloe, hearing me ask for Dr. Evans as soon as I woke up, had the same thought. Enduring Maya's glare, Dr. Evans quickly moved to the side of the bed where I could see her. Mr. Sterling, I'm here. Where is Chloe? Isn't she here? Dr. Evans stammered, unable to get the words out. Seeing her strange expression, I grew more and more uneasy. I forced myself to sit up, ignoring the pain. I'm this injured. How could she be okay? What if her mania acts up and she hurts herself again? Ethan, calm down. No matter how angry you are, you can't neglect your own body. Tell me what you want to do. Maya held my shoulders to keep me from moving. I want to see Chloe. Where is Chloe? At that moment, Chloe couldn't hold back any longer. She hurried to my bedside. Ethan, I'm here. I heard her voice and looked up to see the guilt on her face. Though she looked pale, she seemed to be okay overall, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Then I reached out my hand. Are you okay? Hearing my concern, Chloe couldn't hold back her tears. She immediately squeezed my hand. The others in the room exchanged looks of disbelief. The injured person asking the uninjured one, "Are you okay?" was a first for all of them. The lawyer, seeing this scene, drew on his years of experience and concluded I was being coerced. Mr. Sterling, don't be afraid. Ms. Maya will stand up for you. I frowned, and the faces in front of me started to blur. Seeing my state, Chloe gently helped me lie back down on my side, soothing me. Ethan, I'm fine. Just lie down for now, okay? Feeling her familiar presence close by, my eyelids grew heavy. I gripped her hand tightly and drifted back into a peaceful sleep. Maya saw this and snorted in frustration, but ultimately, she had no choice but to step back and take a seat in the corner of the room. Seeing her move, Chloe took the opportunity to sit by my side and watch over me. After I closed my eyes, the room fell silent once more. After a while, Chloe tucked me in and gave Dr. Evans a look, signaling for her to leave. Maya also dismissed the lawyer. Now only the three of us remained in the room. As Chloe gently wiped my face, she began to probe. Ms. Maya, you're also from the Heart's Embrace Orphanage, aren't you? Oh, does Ms. Blackwood know a lot about my background? In recent years, Lunartech has rapidly established itself in New York, becoming a force comparable to Blackwood Enterprises. As a competitor, I make it my business to know the basics. Is that so? His original name was Ethan Lunar. It was only after he was adopted by the Sterling family that he dropped the first part. Though they were talking, both of their gazes remained fixed on me. As night fell, I still showed no signs of waking. A nurse came in to remind them that only one person could stay overnight. Maya looked at my hand, still clutching Chloe's, and reluctantly got up and left the room. Chloe watched her leave, her heart filled with unease. Scarlett had already pushed their relationship to a freezing point. Just when things were starting to thaw, this had to happen. And now, out of nowhere, a sister had appeared to stand in their way. Her gaze shifted to the injury report on the nightstand. She squeezed my hand tighter and rested her head on it. Ethan, are Lily and I going to lose you forever? I woke up again at 4 in the morning the next day. I don't know if Chloe had been watching me the whole time, but the moment I opened my eyes, she was leaning over me. Ethan, does it still hurt? I felt some of my strength returning. I looked at the woman before me, my expression soured, and I turned my head away. Seeing that I was ignoring her, Chloe knew I was sulking. Ethan, do you want dumplings? I can go get some for you. Even though I was trying to be difficult, her cautious tone made my anger melt away. I nodded. Ethan, I'll go right now. Wait for me. The second after she left, before I had even turned my head, Maya pushed the door open and walked in. I looked at her, confused. What? You don't recognize me anymore? I stared for a long moment, then my mouth fell open in disbelief. Maya, it's really you? I thought yesterday was a dream. Maya walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, looking at me with a helpless expression. You were so determined to leave the organization back then. Now look at you, the great apex, beaten and sent to the hospital. It's a laughingstock. My face flushed red, and I turned away in embarrassment, muttering that it was just an accident. Then a thought struck me, and I turned back to her. You were here yesterday too? Did she ask who you were? Maya's expression instantly turned cold. She treats you like this, and you're still worried she might misunderstand? No, this injury was a misunderstanding. It's not her fault. By the way, Maya, there's something I need your help with. I had barely finished my sentence when Maya flatly refused. Oh, well, never mind then. See you later, Maya. Maya took a deep breath. I can never win with you. Fine, what is it? I plan to start taking missions again. You want to come back to the organization? Why? I need money. Even if Sterling Industries is gone, you're still Chloe Blackwood's husband. Don't tell me she hasn't given you a single penny. She offered before, but I refused. Now I regret it, but I'm too embarrassed to ask. Besides, there are some things I need to do that require the identity of Apex. As I spoke, I thought of Scarlett. As a manager at Willow Creek Incorporated, it would be difficult for me to get close to her in my current capacity. But as Apex, it would be a different story. Maya thought for a moment, then tossed a file onto the bed in front of me. Fine, you can come back, but you have to sign this. I stared at the divorce papers and disability assessment in front of me, my eyes wide. Maya, what is this? The injuries you've sustained are grounds to sue for divorce. I'll have a lawyer help you get out of this marriage. The other document is a stock transfer agreement. Sign it and Lunartech will be yours. You can move out of the Sterling estate and live with me. As Maya was speaking, she suddenly felt a warm touch on her forehead. Maya, did you hit your head? What's with this crazy talk? You don't believe me? I don't want it. Seeing me shake my head, Maya's gaze turned icy. I'm doing this for your own good. Don't you want to leave the Sterling estate? Maya, I know how to handle my own affairs, I said, picking up the documents and tearing them in half before tossing them into the trash. Maya's face darkened. She poked my forehead hard, then stood up and stormed out of the room. I watched my angry sister leave and couldn't help but cough a few times. We were abandoned by our parents as children, left at the doorstep of the Heart's Embrace orphanage. Later, I was chosen by the Sterling family, and we were separated. After that, Maya went out into the world and, with some help from us, founded the mercenary organization. To help my sister and earn some pocket money, I became the organization's first member, codenamed Apex, and completed various missions with her. In my past life, my sister disapproved of my relationship with Scarlett, so I cut off all contact with her. The anger made her so ill she almost died. I never thought I'd see her again in this life. We had parted on bad terms, and Maya left the hospital in a fury. Just as she reached the main entrance, she saw Chloe walking toward her. Their eyes met for a moment. Then, Chloe's gaze shifted to Maya's empty hands, and she unconsciously tightened her grip on the bag she was carrying. She walked straight past Maya and headed for my room. She pushed open the door, took the dumplings out, placed them on a plate, and handed it to me. Ethan, they're hot. Eat slowly. I silently took the dumplings, scooted further into the bed, and turned my body away, signaling that a single meal wasn't enough to make me forgive her. Chloe saw my movement and immediately shifted back a little, afraid of ruining my appetite. The room fell silent, but then, Chloe's eyes happened to fall on the trash can. She instinctively picked up the torn documents. "Ethan, why did you tear these up? Isn't this what you've always wanted?" As Chloe spoke, her eyes first lit up with hope, then dimmed again. She didn't know if my actions meant I wanted to stay with her, or if it was all a ploy to help Scarlett get that confidential file. I turned my head slightly, looked at the papers in her hand, and after a moment's thought, changed the subject. "Maya is my sister, my biological sister." Hearing this, Chloe's eyes brightened again. She hadn't expected me to be considerate of her feelings of jealousy at a time like this. She was about to say something when Dr. Evans walked in at the most inopportune moment. At this point, there was only one dumpling left on the plate. I hesitated for a long time before finally turning around and holding the plate out to Chloe. "I'm full. You eat it. It would be a waste to throw it out." Chloe looked at the dumpling, then at my reluctant gaze as I looked away, and her heart melted. Forgetting all about kicking Dr. Evans out, she immediately picked up the dumpling and ate it in a few bites. Seeing this, I turned my attention to the doorway. "Dr. Evans, when can I be discharged? Given the severity of your injuries, I'd recommend staying for at least 2 months." The words 2 months made me shudder. I quickly turned and grabbed the corner of Chloe's shirt, looking at her with a pleading expression. Chloe saw my pitiful look and opened her mouth to speak. But before she could, Dr. Evans cut her off with a nod. "Recovering at home is also an option. You'll need a checkup every 3 days for 2 weeks. If everything looks good after that, you won't need to come back." With that, she quickly exited the room. Having gotten the answer I wanted, I broke into a satisfied smile. But when I saw Chloe staring at me without blinking, my smile vanished. Downstairs, Ms. Hayes watched from the car as the two of us left the hospital, a look of utter disbelief on her face. This time, Chloe wasn't supporting me. In reality, Chloe desperately wanted to come closer, but she was afraid I would reject her, so she could only follow closely behind. I, on the other hand, was holding my breath. While it felt good to be independent, it also really hurt. And no matter how you looked at it, what happened in the study was forced, and I felt a sense of humiliation. I couldn't bring myself to face her just yet, so I awkwardly avoided her gaze. When we arrived at the Sterling estate, I looked around but didn't see Lily anywhere. Seeing my searching gaze, Chloe quickly explained that Lily had gone with her grandmother to a class reunion and wouldn't be back tonight. I saw the unnatural expression on her face and knew she must have sent Lily away on purpose. I didn't call her out on it and just kept walking. When I reached the lavender field, my steps slowed. I pouted slightly, then returned to my room and closed the door firmly behind me. When Chloe came out of the kitchen with my lunch and entered my room, I was already asleep. She placed the porridge on the nightstand. As she was about to help me turn over, her eyes fell on the large expanse of gauze on my back. The memory of last night's madness hit her, and she stumbled, collapsing to her knees. A moment later, she took the pill bottle from her pocket, swallowed a tablet, and her ragged breathing slowly began to even out. I sensed movement beside me and opened my eyes to see her sitting on the floor, leaning against the bed with a pained expression. I quickly got out of bed and knelt in front of her. "Are you okay? Are you not feeling well?" Seeing my frantic concern, Chloe couldn't hold back any longer. She buried her head in the crook of my neck. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Tell me, what can I do to make up for the harm I've caused you?" I sighed and gently placed my hand on her head. "It's okay. See? I'm fine. When I'm all healed up, if you want, we can sit like this for as long as you like." But even after I finished speaking, Chloe didn't respond, just continued to nuzzle her head against my shoulder. Helpless, I cupped her face in my hands. "Promise me one thing, and I'll forgive you." Chloe snapped back to reality and nodded vigorously. "Ethan, as long as you don't leave me, I'll promise you anything. I haven't thought of it yet. You can owe me. Then I'll wait until you've thought of something. Ethan, I swear, what happened that night will never happen again. If..." I cut her off with a kiss. Chloe's eyes slowly widened as she looked at me, so close to her. Afterwards, I pulled back. "How's that? Feeling better? Don't feel guilty. I didn't tell you about taking the punishment because I was afraid you'd feel guilty. I'm also responsible for what happened, so let's just put it behind us. Can we agree not to mention it again?" Chloe caressed my face and shook her head. "Ethan, why did you go take the punishment? Your injuries from that day hadn't even healed. 5 lashes from the disciplinary hall could have killed you. You're one to talk, always adding new wounds on top of old ones. But this is the last time. I promise I will never let you take a punishment for me again." Chloe's body trembled slightly. She had never expected me to say something like that to her. Looking at my determined face, she was so happy her eyes crinkled into a smile. In the end, Chloe picked up the porridge and insisted on feeding me. I couldn't win against her, so I obediently opened my mouth. After I finished, she even dotingly wiped my mouth. Seeing that I was tired, she covered me with the blanket. After a few more reminders and reassurances, she waited until she was sure I was fast asleep before turning to go to the study to work. In the study, the woman stopped, crouched down, and traced the crimson stain on the carpet with her finger. Her body tensed up again. A few hours later, in the bedroom, my phone suddenly blared with a piercing ringtone. I frowned and pulled the covers over my head, but 3 minutes later, the phone was still ringing. I shot up in bed, but the sudden movement sent a searing pain through my back, making me grit my teeth. When I grabbed the phone and saw the name on the screen, I nearly ground my teeth to dust. "Ethan, what are you doing? Your phone either has no signal or you're not answering." Scarlett's nauseating voice came through the speaker. I opened the window, suppressed my rage, and told her to get to the point. "Haven't you gotten the bid proposal yet? The auction is in 2 weeks. As long as we can get Blackwood Enterprises' bottom line price and their plan, we've won." Scarlett's voice grew more and more excited as she spoke. I just leaned on the windowsill, my face blank. Scarlett waited for a response, but got nothing. She glanced at her phone screen. "Are you listening? Is there anything else?" "Ethan, listen to me. With Chloe's power right now, I can't touch her. But we've worked so hard for so long. If this plan succeeds, along with all the other things you've done, Chloe will be finished. Then you can leave the Sterling estate, and we can live happily ever after. Okay? In a few days, I'll start working at Blackwood Enterprises. I'll figure out a way to get the proposal. Ethan, our future happiness depends on you." I listened to the dial tone and took a deep breath. If this phone hadn't been a gift from Chloe, I would have thrown it out the window. My gaze fell on the phone, and a question suddenly popped into my head. How did Chloe find me that night? After carefully examining the metal charm on the phone, I understood. In the evening, I went down to the kitchen. When I learned that Chloe was still in the study, I thought for a moment, then took the dinner tray from Mrs. Davison and headed straight there. Since my hands were full, I gave the door a few gentle kicks with my foot. Hearing the sound, Chloe's typing stopped. She quickly got up to open the door. After all, no one else would dare to kick her study door. "Ethan, why are you awake?" Chloe asked, taking the tray from me and steadying my arm. I rolled my eyes at her and walked into the room. "Honey, you're being too dramatic. It's not like I can't move." After I set the food down, she immediately buried her head in the crook of my neck, leaning against me and calling it recharging her work energy. I gently bumped my head against hers and placed the bowl in front of her. "Eat up. You still have to put medicine on my back later." That night, I lay on the bed while the woman gently cleaned the inflamed wounds on my back. I racked my brain, unsure how to bring it up. Finally, I gritted my teeth, closed my eyes, and decided to just go for it. "Honey, I have a favor to ask. Can I get a job?" Chloe's hand froze. "You want to leave the Sterling estate? Look, during the day you're at work, and Lily is at preschool. I'm just here at home by myself. You've kept me cooped up long enough, haven't you? I'm a grown man. Where do you want to work? I'll arrange it for you." I was stunned. I turned my head in disbelief. I never expected Chloe to be so agreeable. "Can I come work at Blackwood Enterprises? That way, I can see you whenever I want, and I can help you." Chloe's face was blank, but the fist hidden under her sleeve was clenched so tightly it creaked. "Which department do you want to be in? I'll have Ms. Hayes arrange it." "So you agree?" Chloe nodded, putting the disinfectant supplies back into the first aid kit. An idea sparked in my mind. "Are you looking for an assistant? I see Ms. Hayes is always so busy. Maybe I could take on some of her work? I need to submit an internship report for school anyway. An assistant's job involves a lot of miscellaneous tasks. Can you handle that?" Her question, combined with the look in her eyes, felt like an insult to my intelligence. But I couldn't argue, because I honestly had no idea what an assistant actually did. "How about this? I'll shadow Ms. Hayes for a while first. I'm confident that with my abilities, I can learn the ropes within a week. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. We'll talk about it next week. Then I'll rest for 3 days. After that, I'll start learning from her. No physical work." "Got it. I'll tell her. Let's get some rest." I was so happy that she had agreed so easily to let me leave the estate that I grabbed her hand, intending for her to sleep in my room. Unfortunately, she wasn't in the mood and brushed me off with the excuse that she still had work to do. As she was closing the door, she paused, her hand lingering on the doorknob. She stood there for a full 5 minutes before finally heading to her own bedroom. Chloe looked at the newly decorated room and the scent of lavender filling the air, a faint, bittersweet smile on her lips. She lay down on the bed and pulled the covers over her head. Ethan, even if you're the one to push me into hell, I'll accept it. I just hope this dream lasts a little longer. 3 days later, I walked into the company building and went straight upstairs to find Ms. Hayes. After giving instructions in the main office area, Ms. Hayes returned to her office and collapsed into her chair, exhausted. She had been running around nonstop all day, and now Chloe wanted her to train me as an assistant. The thought gave her a massive headache. She wouldn't be able to criticize me or tell me off, and she'd have to maintain a professional distance. Ms. Hayes let out a groan of despair. I stood at her office door, saw her look of utter defeat, and smiled. Then I called out, "Ms. Hayes, I'm here to report for duty." Startled by my voice, Ms. Hayes jumped up and hurried over. After a brief chat, Ms. Hayes began to show me the ropes of being an assistant. I followed her as we rushed from place to place, visiting several important clients and handling numerous miscellaneous tasks, like running errands for them. We were busy until the evening, when we finally returned to Blackwood Enterprises. The car had just stopped when I saw Chloe walking out of the building. The moment I opened the door, she threw herself into my arms. "Why are you so late? Have you eaten?" I quickly steadied her, afraid she might fall. "We'll eat at home. Lily is waiting for us." Once the car door was closed and we were moving, Chloe gently guided me to lie with my head in her lap. "Where did you go today?" "I met with some clients, visited a construction site, saw a lot and learned a lot," I said. To prove I was taking it seriously, I showed her the small notebook I had been taking notes in. Chloe flipped through the notebook. When she reached the last page, the corners of her mouth turned up, and she held the open book in front of my face. I saw her name, Chloe Blackwood, written over and over on the last page, and turned my head away in embarrassment. There was nothing left to learn at that point. I was just killing time, doing personal things on company time. "That's a $200 fine." I shot up. "Honey, you can't just exploit the working class like that." "I object." Seeing my puffed-up cheeks, Chloe couldn't resist pinching my face. "So what if you object? Go to accounting tomorrow and pay the fine." The moment we arrived at the Sterling estate, I jumped out of the car and ran to find Lily, ignoring the capitalist beside me. Chloe watched me go, then turned to Ms. Hayes. "Check his bank account balance." Meanwhile, Lily was sitting in the main hall. Hearing the door open, she immediately ran over. "Daddy, you're back." "Lily, I missed you so much," I said, showering her with affection as I swept her into my arms. Lily tilted her head up, looked at my tired face, and gently stroked my cheek. "Daddy, were you tired today?" I immediately said I wasn't tired and went to lift her up, but as I exerted myself, I pulled at the wound on my back, and my arms faltered. Lily, unaware of what had happened, just tilted her head. "Daddy, did I get too fat?" Just then, Chloe stepped in front of me, shielding me, and gave Lily a stern look. "Do you need me to carry you?" The next thing I knew, my daughter had been scared off. I gave Chloe a light swat on her rear, my face full of disapproval. "She's just a kid. Why are you scaring her?" "She's a kid, but are you? If I hadn't been watching, you would have tried to push yourself again." At the dinner table, I forgot all about being angry and just stuffed my face. I hadn't eaten since noon, and I was starving. "Daddy, eat slowly. Eating too much at night is bad for digestion." Chloe said nothing, but she kept moving the greasy dishes to her side of the table and the lighter ones to mine. Half an hour later, I watched Chloe leave the table and head to the study. I turned to my daughter, who was wiping her mouth. "Lily, do you want to sleep in Mommy's room tonight?" "Can I?" "But Mommy's room is empty." I figured the room had aired out for a few days and should be fine, so I continued to entice her. "Mommy's room has been redecorated, and there are bedtime storybooks inside. I'll go wherever Daddy goes." Chloe usually didn't go to bed until 11. Since it was still early, I took Lily to the bedroom. "Daddy, did you do this?" Lily asked, lying on the bed and looking around at the new decor. I took a storybook from the shelf and lay down beside her. "What do you think? Do you like it?" "I love it. It feels so cozy," Lily said, clutching the blanket, her face beaming with a joy she couldn't hide. I lay on my side next to her, reading a bedtime story. Half an hour later, Lily looked at me, now asleep, and gently slipped the book from my hand. She placed it aside, then snuggled into my arms and fell asleep with me. After finishing her work, Chloe passed by my bedroom. Her steps faltered, and she paused for a few minutes before continuing on to her own room. As she was about to turn on the light, she saw the figures on the bed. Father and daughter snuggled together. Chloe couldn't resist taking out her phone and snapping a picture. Then, she lifted the covers, slid in, and gently caressed my face. Just then, Lily's soft voice came from between us. "Mommy, you're going to wake Daddy up. Why are you still awake?" "I was waiting for you, Mommy." "Mommy, what's wrong with Daddy these past few days? He seems like a different person. Do you think he'll go back to the way he was before when he wakes up tomorrow?" Lily tilted her head up to look at Chloe. Chloe gently patted the girl's head. He won't. Go to sleep now, go to sleep." Hearing this, Lily relaxed and fell asleep a short while later. The next morning, I opened my eyes and saw the sleeping mother and daughter. I planted a kiss on the little girl's cheek, then gave one to the big girl. When the sound of the door closing echoed through the room, Chloe slowly opened her eyes. She placed a hand on the spot I had kissed, and a smile graced her lips. A little later, Chloe went downstairs and saw Mrs. Davison standing outside the kitchen. After a brief conversation, she learned that I was planning to make breakfast myself today. Her eyes narrowed, and she marched straight into the kitchen. "Honey, what are you doing here? Why don't you sleep in a little?" I asked, holding a spatula in one hand and the instruction manual for the range hood in the other. Chloe looked me up and down, sighed, and then snatched the spatula from my hand. When Lily woke up, the room was empty. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and went downstairs. "Mrs. Davison, breakfast looks amazing today," Lily exclaimed, standing by the dining table and looking at the spread of food. "Young miss, you're awake. Your mommy and daddy made all of this today. Go wash up and come eat." Lily trotted to the kitchen and saw the two of us, one cooking and one setting the table. She grinned and then headed to the bathroom to wash up. At the table, Lily blinked her big eyes and stared at me. "Daddy, are you going to work again today?" That's right. When Daddy gets his paycheck, I'll buy you a present, okay?" Hearing this, Chloe's hand, which was reaching for the milk, paused. She looked at my earnest expression and once again began to doubt the state of my finances. Time passed. Blackwood Enterprises. I saw Ms. Hayes standing next to Chloe, looking dazed, and couldn't resist sidling up to her. "Ms. Hayes, is it a slow day today? We finished everything yesterday, so today is relatively quiet," Ms. Hayes said, though what she was really thinking was that she could finally catch a break for a while, thanks to me. Just then, Ms. Hayes' phone rang. She checked it, then bowed to Chloe. "Ms. Blackwood, Maya is here." My hand, flipping through a magazine, paused. I was a bit confused. Chloe, however, simply nodded and told her to let Maya in. The moment Maya entered the room, she saw me sitting on the sofa. Even as she greeted Chloe, her eyes remained fixed on me. It wasn't until they were about to discuss business that Maya walked over. "I'm here to discuss a partnership for the bid auction next week." "What's the matter? Can't Lunartech handle it?" "As you know, Ms. Blackwood, Lunartech's primary focus is on information technology. We're a bit lacking in the real estate sector, so trying to take this on alone would be a stretch." "You're very direct, Ms. Maya, but I'd like to know, what's in it for us?" With Blackwood Enterprises' resources, securing 3 of the projects shouldn't be a problem, and we have the capability to take 2. Instead of dividing the pie, wouldn't a partnership yield greater benefits for both of us? Chloe's fingers tapped lightly on the table, and the room fell into a brief silence. After a moment, Chloe spoke coolly. "Ms. Hayes, prepare the contract." "No need to trouble Ms. Hayes. I've already prepared one. There's just one clause that requires your agreement, Ms. Blackwood. If either party fails to meet its designated target, they must compensate the other party for double the total losses." Hearing this, Chloe gave a faint smile. She thought Maya's plan to shift the risk was quite clever. Maya, in turn, deflected by saying that her side was more likely to be the one paying compensation. In the end, Chloe reviewed the contract. They were determined to win this bid, and Blackwood Enterprises was fully prepared. The only variable in all of this was me. Listening to their conversation, it suddenly dawned on me. I had always wondered why losing those 6 projects, as important as they were, would be enough to bankrupt Blackwood Enterprises. Now I understood. In the past, when Scarlett stole the projects, Blackwood had to pay a massive penalty to Lunartech. Combined with the sabotage I had carried out on other collaborative projects, that was what led to the company's downfall. The magazine in my hand crumpled as my grip tightened. At the same time, Maya turned to me. "Ethan, what do you think?" I didn't even look up, just kept my eyes fixed on the floor. "Whatever my wife thinks, I think. Ask her directly." It wasn't until Maya had signed the contract and left the office that I snapped out of my thoughts. I walked over and sat down across from Chloe. "Honey, since there's not much going on at the company today, can I go out for a bit? I want to catch up with some old friends I haven't seen in a while." Seeing my pitiful expression, Chloe couldn't bring herself to say no. She just nodded. Be back early. And no messing around. If I find out you've been up to no good, you're going straight back to the estate. The moment I heard her agree, I jumped up and planted a loud kiss on her cheek. Okay, honey, I promise. No messing around, and I'll be home on time tonight. With that, I dashed out of the office. Mr. Sterling, where are you going? Ms. Hayes asked, having just returned to see me rushing out. I'm taking the day off. I'll come find you for more training tomorrow. Ms. Hayes was bewildered, her rare moment of peace already shattered. She knocked on the office door. Ms. Blackwood, we have the results of the asset check on Ethan. Email it to me. Ms. Blackwood, he doesn't have that many assets. No need for an email. Ms. Hayes handed her a single sheet of paper. Chloe turned slightly and looked at the A4 paper, which had only one line of numbers on it. What does this number mean? All of Mr. Sterling's assets are in this one bank account. According to our investigation, the current balance is only $2,129. What about his other assets? Ms. Blackwood, Mr. Sterling has no other assets to his name. He voluntarily renounced his inheritance rights, and the Sterling family fortune was divided among his relatives. Chloe stared at the paper, her eyes downcast. When the Sterling family had their troubles, I had insisted she not interfere, saying I would handle it myself. But in the end, the woman was silent for a moment, her gaze shifting to the window. Tell Mr. Zhang, our lawyer, to compile a list of all assets under my name and come see me the day after tomorrow. Meanwhile, inside the mercenary organization, Maya was in her office, frowning as she looked through the investigation file. No wonder he wants to come back. He's really broke. She looked at the account balance written on the paper and chuckled. Boss, Apex is back, an assistant reported from outside the office. Maya's eyes narrowed, and she snorted. Make him wait outside. 2 hours later, I was leaning against a pillar, my eyes closed, dozing. Another 2 hours passed. Maya glanced at the time and left her office. I heard her footsteps coming down the stairs and opened my eyes slightly, but she walked right past me without a single glance. I had no choice but to block her path. Maya, what do I have to do for you to let me come back? Didn't we already discuss this at the hospital? If I recall correctly, you refused. Maya, I'm not going to divorce her, and I don't want Lunar Tech. This is my personal business. It has nothing to do with the organization. Ethan, I'm just managing the organization in your place. You can come and go as you please. You don't need my permission. Besides, the startup capital for Lunar Tech came from the Half Group. It was always your property to begin with. Her words left me speechless. After a moment of thought, I said, since you won't let me come back as Apex, I'll join the new recruits and go through the trials with them. I'll start from the beginning. Maya's eyes widened for a second. She watched me storm off, then covered her face with her hand in exasperation. I drove back to the Sterling estate and stayed in my room until 2 a.m. Then I got out of bed, changed into a black outfit, put on a baseball cap and a mask, and slipped out through the balcony window. I went to the garage, got on my motorcycle and left the estate, Blackwood Enterprises. I parked the motorcycle in a spot with no security cameras and quickly approached a first-floor restroom window. I had already broken the latch earlier in the day, so all I had to do was push it open to get inside. At this hour, the only light in the building came from the emergency lights in the hallways. To avoid the patrol guards, I had to take the stairs all the way to the 26th floor. After the long climb, I leaned on the railing, gasping for breath. If the file hadn't been moved, it should still be in her office drawer. I cautiously looked around, then used a piece of wire to pick the lock and slip inside. However, the moment the office door opened, an alarm sounded on Chloe's phone. Back at the estate, the lightly sleeping woman opened her eyes and turned to her phone. She sat up, watched the live security feed, and her hand unconsciously tightened on the bedsheet. Then, she slowly closed her eyes. By now, I had opened the first drawer and was searching through a pile of documents with a flashlight. I quickly found the file I was looking for. I took out my phone and took pictures of every page. All I had to do was alter the data, take new pictures and send them to Scarlett. Then, at the auction, Willow Creek would be finished. But to be safe, I would wait until the day before the auction to send her the pictures, just in case something unexpected happened. I glanced at the time. It was 4 a.m. I put the file back exactly as I had found it and quietly slipped out of the office. Back at the Sterling estate, watching me tiptoe out of the office on her screen, a small, unreadable smile played on Chloe's lips. By the time I got back to the estate, fell asleep, and woke up again, it was already 10 in the morning. I saw the time and shot up in bed. What's going on? Why didn't anyone wake me up? I quickly got dressed, washed up, and went downstairs. Mrs. Davison saw me rushing out the door and quickly called after me, "Mr. Ethan, Ms. Blackwood said there's nothing urgent at the office today, so you can rest at home." I immediately stopped and breathed a sigh of relief. This was the perfect opportunity to work on the altered documents. I took my breakfast back up to my room. Just then, Scarlett's call came through. I glanced at the screen and went back to work on the files. 2 hours later, when I was almost finished, I called her back, placing the phone on the desk. The moment the call connected, her angry voice erupted from the speaker. "What the hell have you been doing? I couldn't reach you for days. The auction is the day after tomorrow. You've been at Blackwood Enterprises all this time and you still haven't gotten it." My fingers paused on the keyboard, and I frowned. "Are you blaming me?" Scarlett's face turned pale with anger. She took a deep breath. "Ethan, I'm not blaming you. The auction is about to start. You need to send me Blackwood's bottom line price so we can undercut them. Do you understand? Don't worry. I know where the file is, but Chloe is watching me like a hawk. I can't get to it. Isn't there any other way? I heard from Ms. Hayes that Chloe is going to Boston tomorrow at 6 p.m. and won't be back until 4 a.m. I can use that time to sneak into the office and get the pictures for you. But isn't that a bit late?" Scarlett paced her office. "Can't you do it any earlier? That's only 4 hours before the auction starts. The timing is too tight. I'll do my best, but I can't guarantee success." "Fine then, but no later than that. Ethan, our future is in your hands." I gave a soft grunt of agreement and waited for her to ramble on for a while before she finally hung up. Then I looked at the documents in my hand and sneered. Meanwhile, Aiden saw the furious Scarlett and hurried over to console her. "How did it go? Did he get it? He's a complete waste, taking forever to get one file. If he wasn't useful for keeping Chloe distracted, I would have blocked him ages ago." Scarlett kicked a chair aside in her rage. "Scarlett, don't get upset. We're just one step away from success. As long as we win this bid, your uncle will be so impressed. You'll finally be able to outshine your sister and win the board election." His words calmed her down a bit. "You're right. My sister has always been one step ahead of me in everything. This time, I'm going to use this bid to crush her. Once I become the chairwoman of Willow Creek, we'll get married." Evening at Blackwood Enterprises. Ms. Hayes stood beside Chloe, hardly daring to breathe. Chloe's expression had been dark ever since she left the estate this morning. Only when the helicopter was ready did she dare to speak. Chloe nodded, stood up, and walked out of her office. But the moment she pushed the door open, she saw me leaning against the opposite wall. Ms. Hayes was shocked to see me. "A day off?" She remembered Chloe saying I had the day off. The next moment, I walked quickly to Chloe's side and took her hand. "Honey, where are you going?" "I want to come too. I've already taken Lily to the old mansion. It's business. You stay here. We'll be busy late into the night." I pretended not to notice her pulling her hand away and reached for it again. "If you're not afraid, why should I be? Besides, I slept enough today." Seeing me act like a spoiled child, Chloe's mood lightened slightly. She said nothing more, just turned and left the office. I quickly grabbed my backpack and followed behind Ms. Hayes, trying to keep a low profile. On the helicopter, I remained silent, clutching my backpack. Chloe glanced at me a few times before turning her gaze to the window. After we landed, the three of us got into a car and headed straight for the hotel. According to Ms. Hayes, there was a business dinner at the Ritz-Carlton that night that Chloe needed to attend. But when I heard the word dinner, I punched my backpack in frustration. If I had known there would be food, I wouldn't have packed so many snacks. Upon arriving at the hotel, Chloe went straight to the main banquet hall, while Ms. Hayes and I headed to a lounge area. I had barely sat down when a call came in. I stepped out of the hall and found a quiet corner to answer the phone. "Maya, what's up? I see your location is in Boston. As it happens, there's a mission here. If you complete it, you can officially return to the Haft Group. It's that simple?" In the banquet hall of the Ritz-Carlton, there's a man named Mr. Vance. Get the chip from his neural interface and deliver it by 5 p.m. tomorrow. That will count as your success. I sent his photo to your phone. By the way, the chip is specially designed. No one can remove it but him. A wicked smile played on my lips. Then we'll see if he values his head more or his chip. Be careful. He's surrounded by bodyguards. After hanging up, I rolled my shoulders, loosening the joints. Ms. Hayes checked the time and was about to go look for me when she saw me walk in. I settled back into my seat and began scanning the people in the banquet hall. It didn't take long to find the man from the photo. "Ms. Hayes, who is that man?" I asked, having spotted him immediately. "That's Mr. Vance, the son of the event's host." I nodded, watching Mr. Vance continuously talking to my wife, and a deep sense of unease washed over me. My rational mind told me to assess the situation and wait for an opportunity. But the next thing I knew, I was standing right next to Chloe. The people around us were stunned by my actions. He actually dared to go up and pull Ms. Blackwood away? Does he have a death wish? Mr. Vance frowned at the sudden interruption but forced a smile. Ms. Blackwood, and this is? Chloe ignored him and just looked at me. Seeing me pressed so close to her side, the corners of her mouth lifted unconsciously. What's wrong? Couldn't sit still? Hearing her indulgent tone, I met her gaze for a moment before forcing myself to look away. You haven't eaten anything. Don't keep drinking. Mr. Vance, standing there getting a face full of our public display of affection, suddenly remembered something. You must be Mr. Sterling, right? Mr. Vance sized me up. He had heard that Chloe's husband was named Ethan, but that their relationship was strained. They had never even had a wedding, and to avoid gossip, she had supposedly kept him under house arrest at the Sterling estate. I ignored him, moved even closer, and took Chloe's hand. Chloe glanced at the time. It was already 10 p.m. She figured she wouldn't be done anytime soon. Ethan, there's a room upstairs. You go rest first. We'll head back as soon as things are wrapped up here. I hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. As we left the banquet hall, I let go of her arm and walked ahead. Seeing my jealous pout, Chloe couldn't help but laugh. Ethan, the room is on the 5th floor. I stopped, took a few steps back, and got into the elevator. The elevator chimed as it reached the floor. I walked straight to the room without looking back. The moment I tried to close the door, Chloe blocked it with her hand, stepped inside, and locked it behind her. Then, she threw herself into my arms. Ethan, why are you acting like a jealous girlfriend? Are you pouting? I instinctively shook my head and tried to push her away, but my mind was at war with itself. After a brief struggle, I ended up pulling her into a tight embrace. Ethan, if you don't want to be here, we can just go back. I'll rest here for a bit. You go on. There are a lot of people waiting for you downstairs. Will you be okay on your own? I'll be in the room. Nothing will happen. My rational side took over, and I gently stroked her head. Seeing that my mood had improved, Chloe lingered for another moment of affection before finally leaving the room. 10 minutes later, I opened the door, saw the empty hallway, and headed straight for the hotel's security room. After easily picking the lock with a special wire, I began reviewing the footage from the banquet hall. On the monitor, Mr. Vance was storming out of the banquet hall toward the restroom, kicking a trash can as he passed. He was twisted with jealousy, blaming me for ruining his hard-won chance to get close to Chloe. Who was the idiot who said Ethan was under house arrest? He seemed perfectly fine. While he was venting his anger in the restroom, I was in a nearby utility closet, changing into a waiter's uniform. I put on a mask and a service cap, then stood by the door, observing my surroundings. When I heard the sound of a toilet flushing from one of the stalls, a smirk formed on my lips. I picked up a bucket of water and dumped it all over the top. Hearing a string of curses, I grabbed the bucket and left the restroom. Taking advantage of the empty hallway, I slipped into his private suite. 5 minutes later, the man stormed into the room in a powerless rage and unleashed a torrent of abuse on his bodyguards. The next moment, he strode toward the closet. The instant he opened the door, I lunged out, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him to the ground. The sudden chokehold sent Mr. Vance into a panic. He tried to scream for help, but my grip on his throat was too tight. After a few moments, his eyes rolled back, and he passed out. Seeing him unconscious, I took off my cap and scanned the room. Once I was sure it was secure, I flipped him over and began to examine the interface on the back of his head. After a moment, I pulled out a USB drive inside. I thought for a second, then bound his hands and feet with duct tape, dragged him into the bathroom, tossed him into the tub, and turned on the shower. The cold water splashing on his face shocked Mr. Vance awake. But with his mouth taped shut, all he could manage were muffled groans. I typed a few words on my phone and held it in front of his face. Tell me how to remove the chip, or in 1 minute, I'm taking your head along with it. You're after the money? Then this is all negotiable. The next second, however, I pulled out a blade and began tracing a line across his neck. 10 minutes later, I had the chip wrapped in a tissue. I washed my hands, then climbed out the window, using the air conditioning unit to cross over to the adjacent empty room. A moment later, I heard the sound of bodyguards breaking down the door next door. I opened my own door and casually walked away. Soon after, back in the banquet hall, an assistant rushed to find Mr. Vance Sr. and explain the situation. Upon hearing the news, Mr. Vance Sr. immediately excused himself from his conversation with Chloe and left the hall. Ms. Hayes then approached Chloe from behind. Ms. Blackwood, I heard Mr. Vance was kidnapped and injured. Hearing the word kidnapped, Chloe's brow furrowed. She stood up and headed for the stairs. At the same time, I was in the shower, trying to wash the faint smell of metal off my skin. But just as I stepped out, there was a knock at the door. Chloe's anxious voice came through the door. "Ethan, are you in there?" I'm here. Why are you back?" I froze for a second at the sound of her voice, quickly hid my weapon, gave myself a quick wipe down, and opened the door. Chloe breathed a sigh of relief when she saw I was unharmed, but then her eyes widened. "Your back wound hasn't fully healed yet. How can you be taking a shower?" I simply turned my back to her, taking a small step closer in the process. Chloe's face immediately flushed. She hastily pulled back, averting her gaze. As long as you didn't wash your back. Someone was kidnapped, so the banquet is over. So can we leave now?" Chloe looked at my wet hair, then at the time. "Let's just stay here tonight." "But isn't the bid auction tomorrow?" Hearing this, Chloe gave me an unreadable look, then brushed the damp hair from my forehead. "We'll leave at 5 a.m. Get some rest. Good night." I watched her quickly leave the room, feeling a pang of disappointment. But then I thought, after how she's been with me, I'm sure I can win back her trust sooner or later. In Mr. Vance's room, a crowd of doctors had just finished treating the wound on the back of his head and were now filing out. "Dad, you have to do something. You didn't see who it was?" "All I know is that it was a man, dressed as a waiter. We can check the security footage." We went to the security room immediately, but today's recordings have all been corrupted. They can't be recovered. What? So I just have to suffer for nothing? That was all my cryptocurrency. All right, stop crying. I've already locked down the hotel. I'll have every room searched. I refuse to believe we can't find him. Half an hour later, just as I was about to go to sleep, there was a knock on my door. "Hello, sir. Sorry to disturb you so late. Something was stolen from us, and the thief is still in the building. Would you mind if we did a quick search?" I saw the detector in the man's hand, and my heart skipped a beat. I pretended to check my phone, then put on an angry expression. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" "Our apologies, sir, but these are Mr. Vance Sr.'s orders. Please cooperate with us." Looking at the team assembled before me, it was clear Mr. Vance Sr. was pulling out all the stops to get his son's chip back. A hotel-wide search in the middle of the night, wasn't he afraid of offending people? I yawned, my expression turning cold. Is this how the Ritz-Carlton treats its guests? What does your lost property have to do with me? The staff member could tell I wasn't an ordinary guest and seemed hesitant. Seizing the advantage, I angrily slammed the door in his face. The moment it was shut, I rushed to the bathroom and flushed my blade down the toilet. The fact they had detectors meant the chip must be coated with some kind of traceable substance. I scanned the room. From the 5th floor, the large swimming pool below was still active with people, so throwing it out was not an option. Instead, I took the tissue-wrap chip, wound a 6-foot length of tape around it, and lowered it down the sink drain into the pipe. I used a waterproof disc to cover the opening, leaving just a tiny, transparent tab of tape visible so I could pull it back up. Just then, another knock came at the door. I filled the sink with water and some soap suds, splashed my face, and then stormed over to open the door. "Mr. Sterling, my apologies for the disturbance." This time, it was Mr. Vance Sr. himself. Everyone in the business world knew Chloe had a husband, but since I was just the adopted son of the Sterling family, I wasn't considered presentable, so we never even had a wedding. Though his words were polite, his face was filled with contempt. I looked him up and down and returned his disdainful expression. "Is there something I can help you with?" Though Mr. Vance Sr. was dismissive, he knew he had to be careful with Chloe in the picture. He responded politely, "Mr. Sterling, my son was attacked a short while ago. The culprit is still at large and may be hiding in the hotel. For the safety of all our guests, we are conducting a thorough search of all rooms and public areas. We ask for your cooperation." "Are you going to search my wife's room too?" "Ms. Blackwood, of course, is exempt." I scoffed, stepped aside, and turned on all the lights in the room. Then I casually sat down in a corner. Several large men in black suits immediately entered and began to tear the room apart. I yawned, watching them sweep the room with their devices, feigning indifference. Inwardly, I was panicking. If they could actually trace it through the pipes, not only would I fail the mission, but Chloe would be implicated. Just as a staff member with a scanner walked into the bathroom, I was contemplating whether I should drug them all when a voice suddenly came from the doorway. "What are you doing?" Chloe stood in the doorway, her eyes fixed on Mr. Vance Sr. I felt like I'd been saved. I quickly called out, "Honey," and gave a little wave. Seeing the room full of people, Chloe strode over to stand in front of me, her gaze still locked on Mr. Vance Sr. "What is the meaning of this, Mr. Vance? Do you think the Sterling family has no one to stand up for it?" Or are you simply pretending I don't exist? Mr. Vance Sr. flinched and took a step back from the furious woman. Cursing the unreliable rumors under his breath, he forced a sycophantic smile. A misunderstanding, Ms. Blackwood. We were only searching because we feared the attacker might be hiding in Mr. Sterling's room. It was for his own safety. So you're saying an attacker can just waltz into a guest's room? Is this the level of security at the Ritz-Carlton? Chloe pressed, stepping forward. Mr. Vance Sr. could only bow his head in apology and call off the search team. After all the irrelevant people had left, Chloe finally turned around. Seeing me with my head down, not saying a word, she teased, "What's this? So timid today? Where's your usual spirit?" I scratched my head and gave an awkward laugh. "Well, you were here. I couldn't be bothered to deal with them myself." Seeing my stubborn denial, Chloe smiled faintly and pushed me onto the bed. "Then I won't ask. Ethan, I arrived just in time. Don't you think I deserve a reward?" She leaned closer and closer, her breath warm on my face. I don't know if it was my guilty conscience or the strange look in her eyes, but I instinctively turned my head away. "What kind of reward do you want? Stay with me. Don't leave me," Chloe said, her eyes turning red as she spoke. The sight made my nose sting with a familiar ache. After a few seconds of silence, I forced a smile. "Then will you protect me? You know, guys have their days of the month too." Chloe laughed through her tears. "Who talks like that? Ethan, I will protect you. Just stay by my side, okay? I'll give you anything you want." "Anything I want?" I asked, wrapping my arms around her neck. Chloe hummed softly in agreement. "Then don't leave tonight." My meaning was clear. Chloe's eyes widened instantly. Her breathing quickened, and her hands tightened on the fabric of my shirt at my waist. With the last shred of her composure, she asked, "Ethan, do you see who I am?" Her question filled me with a bitter sorrow. I had taken the woman who loved me most, a confident and brilliant CEO, and broken her into this insecure version of herself. My fingertips gently touched her lips. "I see you clearly. You're Chloe Blackwood. You're my wife." Before I could finish, she pounced. Unlike the time in the study, this time I was sitting up, facing the bed. At dawn, she woke before I did. She gazed at my face, mesmerized, but the smile on her lips vanished at the thought of today's bid auction. She buried her face in the pillow and whispered a plea, "Ethan, please don't let me taste happiness only to push me back into hell. I can't bear it. Dumplings, all mine. I'll leave one for you," I mumbled in my sleep beside her. Hearing this, Chloe couldn't help but laugh, nodding repeatedly. "They're all yours. The dumplings and me too." An hour later, I was woken by a phone call. The thought struck me and I shot up in bed. I checked the time. There were still 2 hours until the auction began. Still time. I immediately sent the altered photos to Scarlett. Meanwhile, Willow Creek Incorporated was in chaos. Scarlett paced back and forth, her legs almost giving out when the files finally came through. With time running out, she gave them a cursory glance, ordered a few minor changes, and had her team submit the documents for review just before the deadline. Back in the hotel room, I tossed my phone aside. Looking around the empty room, my eyes fell on a note on the nightstand. It read, "Ethan, I'll be back in a little while. Wait for me." Soon enough, Chloe returned. She looked at me on the bed, her eyes narrowing slightly. I immediately spotted the bag of dumplings in her hand and threw off the covers. "Honey, did you go all the way back to New York? Why didn't you take me with you? Aren't you tired from all that running around?" My eyes were filled with concern, though they kept darting to the dumplings. I was deeply moved. After we both got dressed and washed up, Chloe sat with me while I ate breakfast. I wanted to ask about the auction, but she said we had to go home first. Seeing no other option, I resorted to being a pest again. "Honey, let me come with you. I studied a related field, you know. Maybe I can learn something." Seeing my happy smile, Chloe's heart clenched, but she still nodded in agreement. She knew that at this auction, Willow Creek Incorporated was already set to win 4 of the projects, and Lunartech was eyeing the remaining 2. Blackwood Enterprises was destined to walk away with nothing. Lost in thought, Chloe gazed out the window. I saw her expression and leaned closer. "What's wrong, honey? Didn't you sleep well?" "It's nothing. You eat." "No way. You'll waste away just drinking porridge," I said, holding a dumpling to her lips. After she ate it, I offered her the porridge. An hour later, at the bid auction, a total of 20 companies were participating, selected from over 26,000 firms across New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. Each was a major player in its respective field. I sat calmly beside Chloe. I had put a tremendous amount of effort into altering that file. With Scarlett's intelligence, she would never notice the changes. All I had to do was sit back and watch her make a fool of herself. Chloe glanced at me out of the corner of her eye, a little confused. She had assumed I only came along because I wanted to see Scarlett. But now I hadn't looked in that direction once. "Ms. Hayes, are you the one presenting later?" I asked, looking at the assistant who was poring over her materials. Beads of sweat were already forming on her forehead. She was clearly nervous. "Sir, with all these companies here, we can't afford a single mistake on this project. Relax. If it comes down to it, I can go up there for you," I said, looking at the materials in my hand, eager for a chance. I had spent so much time altering the file these past few days that I had it memorized. Now I was just waiting for an opportunity to shine. Seeing my confident expression, Chloe couldn't help but tease me. On the other side of the room, Maya's assistant glanced at me being affectionate with Chloe, then at Maya's stony expression, and silently scooted to the far end of the sofa. Scarlett watched me and Chloe getting closer and closer, a strange feeling creeping up on her. But before she could dwell on it, the auction began. According to the lottery, we were the last to present. As the other companies gave their reports, I saw Chloe resting with her eyes closed and felt a pang of regret. I knew she had a big day today, yet I had kept her up all night, and she still went out to get me breakfast this morning. She must be exhausted. So, I listened with even greater focus, noting down any data discrepancies from the other companies' presentations in my notebook. Since our file was already submitted and couldn't be changed, the only way to increase our chances of winning was to find flaws in our competitors' proposals. Ms. Hayes saw how diligently I was working and nodded in approval. 2 hours passed, and 10 companies had finished their presentations. After another hour, signs of fatigue were visible on everyone's faces. The representative from Willow Creek Incorporated was second to last. As he began his presentation, Mr. Willow and Mr. Zhao from the board nodded repeatedly in approval. Seeing their reactions, Scarlett was ecstatic. Ms. Hayes, however, had turned pale. Willow Creek's proposal was identical to Blackwood's. At the same time, Chloe's back went rigid, her fingers clenched into tight fists. The last glimmer of hope she had been clinging to was extinguished, and her face became ashen. She gave the order to withdraw from the bid and prepare to leave. Ms. Hayes was stunned for a moment, but she knew that going up to present now would do more harm than good. At a high-stakes auction like this, if 2 proposals were identical, both parties would be disqualified unless one could immediately provide clear evidence of plagiarism. Her thoughts turned to me. If Blackwood Enterprises decided to press the issue, Scarlett would undoubtedly throw me under the bus. She was banking on the fact that Chloe wouldn't be willing to sacrifice my reputation. Seeing them about to leave, I grabbed Chloe's arm as she stood up, my face pleading. "Honey, please, just trust me this once, okay?" Chloe's body went rigid. She slowly turned back, her eyes, once as bright as cold stars, were now dull and lifeless, filled with despair and resignation. She looked at me, her lips trembling as if she wanted to say something, but all that came out was a barely audible sigh. She thought I was using this final moment of tenderness to bargain for her silence, to protect Scarlett and my own pathetic reputation. "Ethan, that's enough. Let's go home," she said, her voice hoarse and tinged with a plea. Ms. Hayes was on the verge of tears, whispering urgently, "Sir, let's go. If we stay any longer." Across the room, a triumphant smirk played on Scarlett's lips, while Aiden put on a show of being heartbroken, and Maya, my sister, just watched me coldly, a hint of disappointment in her eyes. I ignored them all, my gaze fixed on Chloe as I repeated, word by word, "Chloe, trust me." This was perhaps the first time in 2 lifetimes that I had looked at her with such a steady, clear gaze. From the depths of my eyes, she seemed to see a light she had never seen before. It wasn't a plea, not a request, but the confidence of someone in complete control. She froze, her hand, which had been about to pull away, hovering in midair. Now, I let go of her and, under the stunned gazes of the entire room, calmly took out my new phone and dialed a number. "It's me," I said into the phone, just 2 words. A respectful voice replied from the other end, "Apex, everything is ready. Begin." The moment I spoke, the massive LED screen at the front of the hall, which had been displaying the Willow Creek Incorporated logo, suddenly fizzled and switched to an image of deep space. Then, a logo formed from countless stars, radiating technology and power, materialized on the screen. Haft Group. Every business elite in the room, including the heads of major corporations, gasped in unison. The Haft Group? The global tech and security giant. What are they doing getting involved in a real estate bid? Amidst the murmurs, a promotional video began to play. Cutting-edge weapons development, an all-seeing intelligence network, and the legendary mercenary organization, scene after scene shocked the audience to their core. And when, at the end of the video, a line of gold text slowly faded in, the entire hall fell into a dead silence. Congratulations to Mr. Ethan Sterling on his appointment as Executive Officer, Half Group, America's Division, internal code name, Apex. The photo showed me in a sharp black suit, my eyes piercing, a world away from the kept man image I had cultivated. Boom! It was as if a bomb had gone off in the conference hall. The smug look on Scarlett's face instantly froze, then turned deathly pale. Aiden's mask of grief shattered, replaced by sheer disbelief. And Chloe, she whipped her head around and stared at me, her beautiful eyes a whirlwind of shock, confusion, and bewilderment, all of it swirling together until it dissolved into a thick mist of tears. Ethan, you... I didn't answer her, just gave her a reassuring smile and started walking toward the stage. Every step seemed to land on the collective heartbeat of the room. I picked up the microphone, my gaze sweeping over Scarlett and Aiden like a sharpened blade. Willow Creek's proposal is indeed highly similar to ours. I began, my voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. That's because the so-called final version was leaked to Miss Scarlett by me personally. The room erupted in an uproar. Scarlett, as if grasping at a lifeline, shrieked, "You all heard him. He admitted it himself. He's the one who betrayed Blackwood." I cut her off with a cold laugh. "Not so fast. Just because I gave it to you, does that make it real?" With that, I took a small drive from my pocket, the very chip I had taken from Mr. Vance, and plugged it into the main computer. Some of you may have heard about the recent incident at the Ritz-Carlton. As it happens, I was the attacker. Another bombshell dropped, leaving the audience reeling. I continued, "I went after Mr. Vance for one reason, this." The screen changed, and the contents of the chip began to play. It contained crystal-clear recordings of every conversation between Scarlett and Aiden, all their financial transactions, and the entire conspiracy of how they colluded with an offshore illegal financial entity, the very organization behind Mr. Vance, to use this auction to launder money and short the stock of both Blackwood Enterprises and Lunar Tech. Aiden, once we ruin Chloe, you'll have the perfect excuse to be by her side, comforting her. Scarlett, I'll definitely get that file from that idiot Ethan. And then all of Blackwood will be yours. Vicious words, dirty deals, one after another, all laid bare for everyone to see. But that's not all. My voice turned to ice. This chip also recorded something else. 2 years ago, a seemingly accidental car crash took the lives of my adoptive parents and family, leading to the takeover of Sterling Industries. And the mastermind of that crash, all to clear a path and curry favor with the executives at Willow Creek's New York branch, was Aiden. The hatred of my past life, the vengeance of this one, all erupted in that single moment. Aiden collapsed to the floor, his face ashen. Scarlett began to scream like a madwoman. "No, it wasn't me. He did it all. Ethan, you can't do this to me. I love you. Love me?" I scoffed, my eyes filled with contempt. "Is your love torturing me to death in a past life, then running off with Aiden to live happily ever after?" The casual words struck Chloe's heart like a bolt of lightning. She instantly understood the reason for all my strange behavior, for everything that had happened. The tenderness, the dependence, the guilt. She realized my soul had been wandering through an endless hell for far, far too long. Her tears finally broke free. Not because of my identity, not because I had saved the day, but simply out of pure, aching sympathy for everything I had been through. The back doors of the hall were thrown open, and police officers and agents from the Commercial Crimes Division swarmed in. Cold steel handcuffs were snapped onto the wrists of Scarlett and Aiden. The farce was finally over. I walked off the stage and went straight to Chloe. She was crying uncontrollably, like a helpless child. I gently wiped away her tears, pulled her into my arms, and whispered in her ear, "I'm sorry, Chloe, for everything you've been through. I'm back now. I'm truly, truly back by your side." She just nodded vigorously in my arms, sobbing too hard to speak. Just then, Maya walked over. She looked at us, her expression complex, before finally letting out a sigh. "You little brat, you finally acted like a man. Sister-in-law, if he ever dares to bully you again, you tell me. I'll break his legs for you." Chloe looked up from my embrace, her eyes red, and actually managed a small smile at Maya. The auction, naturally, ended in a landslide victory for Blackwood Enterprises. My revised, perfected proposal, combined with a forward-thinking supplementary plan, won unanimous praise from the judges. After the event, Chloe's parents rushed over. The two elders looked at me, all traces of their previous animosity gone, replaced only by relief and pride. "Good lad, you're worthy of being a son-in-law to the Blackwood family," her father said, clapping me firmly on the shoulder. The sun began to set, its golden rays bathing the tree-lined path leading to the Sterling estate. I was driving with Chloe in the passenger seat. In the back was Lily, whom we had just picked up from the old mansion. "Daddy, you were so amazing today. They're talking about you on TV," Lily exclaimed, waving her little hands, her face full of admiration. I smiled, looking at her in the rearview mirror. "So, who's more amazing, Daddy or Mommy?" "Both of you," Lily answered sweetly. Then she leaned between our seats and whispered, "Daddy, Mommy, are we going home now?" "Yes, we're going home," I replied softly. Chloe turned her head to look at me, her eyes, now shining with a renewed light, so gentle they seemed to overflow with warmth. She didn't speak, just reached out and tightly squeezed my hand as it rested on the gearshift. The car slowly pulled into the Sterling estate, passing through the field of pink lavender. I parked, scooped up my sleepy daughter with one arm, and felt Chloe's hand firmly grasp my other. The three of us, bathed in the evening glow, walked the path toward our house. The silhouette of our home grew clearer ahead, warm and peaceful. All the suffering and hatred of my past life had dissipated like smoke. In this life, all I wanted was to hold their hands and walk through every ordinary, happy day. "Daddy, Mommy?" Lily murmured from my arms, rubbing her eyes as if in a dream. "Lily loves coming home with Daddy and Mommy the most." I looked down and planted a kiss on my daughter's forehead. Then, I looked at Chloe beside me. She was looking up at me, her eyes filled with a deep, unwavering love. I smiled. Yes, we were home, and it was good.